afternoon. I'd like to call to order this meeting of the Board of Water Commissioners. It is Wednesday, June 26, 2 p.m. Are we getting an echo? Yeah. We
I
are.
think we are.
Is there anything we can do to address that echo? Okay, so of public access pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023 and all other applicable laws temporarily amending certain provisions of the Open Meeting Act. You are hereby advised this meeting and all communications during this meeting may be recorded by the town of Hingham in accordance with the open meeting law. If any participant wishes to record this meeting, please notify the chair at the start of the meeting in accordance with Mass General Law, Chapter 38, Section 20F, so that the chair may inform all other participants of said recording. Is anyone else recording this meeting?
No, could you speak up a little bit?
Sorry,
Thank you.
I will do that. Is anyone else recording this meeting? So, are there any other committees here that have a quorum that we need to call to order? Please, if you can just go up to the podium, please.
Sure. Stephen Weiss, Chair of the Weir River System Citizens Advisory Board, calling our meeting to order in accordance with the open meeting statement that the chair just did.
Great, thank you. Are there any other boards or committees that have a quorum that need to call their meetings to order? I see none. You see anyone else?
I think it's just the computer and the line.
Okay, come on in. So the topic for today's meeting is an update on the status of the Weir River water system, water quality, and a review of recent events concerning discolored water. So I just want to give some background here. And again, if you can't hear me, please raise your hand and I will endeavor to speak louder. Okay. Starting exactly 1 week ago, on Wednesday, June 19th, our water users experienced an unacceptable discoloration and in some cases, actual sediment in the water they received from our system. So this hearing will include a discussion of what happened, what has been done to address the situation, what has been done to decrease the likelihood that an incident like this will recur, what health effects, if any, resulted from the incident, and how can we improve communications to our water users so that they are informed in a prompt and accurate manner about these types of incidents. I recognize that our water users are justified in their concern about this incident. Water delivery was not up to our standards. We are sorry that our water users experienced problems with the water that was delivered. This board, the Board of Water Commissioners, has oversight responsibility for the water system, and we intend to get answers to our questions and to your questions about this incident. And by way of background, most of you recall that in 2019, the residents of Hingham voted to acquire the water company operations from Aquarian. And in 2020, we awarded to Suez Water Environmental Services a contract for the operation and maintenance of that water system. And in March of 2022, Veolia North America acquired Suez assets and business, including its contract to operate the Weir River water system. That contract requires Veolia to be, quote, responsible for the complete operation and maintenance of the water system. Specifically, the company is responsible for full operation and maintenance of the water system in accordance with federal, state, and local standards. And we intend to make sure that our oversight holds Veolia accountable to the contract. There have been some questions about why this meeting is scheduled for today, Wednesday afternoon. And I want to address that. We initially decided to hold a meeting. I made that determination late Friday. the open meeting law requires at least 48 hours notice starting on a weekday. So that precluded Monday and Tuesday. Wednesday today is the earliest day that we could hold a meeting. There was some thought about doing it in the evenings. There were conflicts, as you know, the whole. And we did not want to wait to our next regularly scheduled select board meeting, which is next Tuesday. So I decided to hold this meeting as soon as we could in a reasonable time, making sure that residents had due notice, that they had the opportunity to submit questions in advance so that they could be looked at by us and by Veolia and responded to at this meeting. This meeting is being recorded so that others can view it. And for those who cannot make this meeting, this topic will again appear on our agenda at our next meeting Tuesday evening. So at this point, I just want to go over how we're going to proceed. I'd like to hear from the representatives who are here from Veolia. I'll introduce them. After that, I will ask for questions from my fellow water commissioners. And then I'll ask for questions from the Citizens Advisory Board. And then following that, members of the public will have opportunity to ask their questions. So sitting here, and please correct me if I didn't get your titles or your names exactly right. We have John Oatley, Senior Vice President of Operations for Veolia, Michael Leahy, Regional Manager, Darren Dirth, Project Manager, Leanne Monahan, the Assistant Project Manager, and remotely, we have Chris Holloran, who's the Manager for Communications and Community Relations for Veolia for this area. And so with that, I will turn it over to John, and you can introduce your speakers. I know you have a presentation as well. And again, I'm doing my best to speak loudly because folks out there need to hear. So
I'll do my best to get my voice up. Chris, do you want to start the presentation or?
So we're going to dim the lights so people can see. And if you need to move your seats so you can see better, please feel free to do so.
Well, Chairman Fisher, thank you for inviting Veolia and my team here today to come before the board and present an opportunity to discuss the events that occurred on June 19th and then subsequent days following. We really appreciate that opportunity. Before I get started, there is a couple things I'd like to acknowledge. And first is certainly Russell for the support.
Speak up a little bit, sure, quite a ways away from it.
I'd like to acknowledge the support that we received, particularly from Russell at the beginning and throughout the event. His guidance, his counsel, as well as the support that he gave our team was instrumental to us and continues to be. I'd also like to take a moment to acknowledge the Veolia crews, the people that were on the ground out there meeting with residents and actually doing all the work out in the field. So with that, Honorable Chairman, we did put together a presentation. I do have an introduction slide, but you adequately and appropriately announced who we all are. So, I'll just begin.
I can see that people are still straining to hear you. So
Would it be better if I moved to a different location, maybe?
Should we go to the podium?
If you stood up or.
yeah,
I can't hear you.
Maybe it's because I'm talking this way.
right. So
Yeah.
one suggestion, we're going to take the podium and turn it around.
Yeah, I don't necessarily need a podium. I can probably stand better if that work. It's down. We'll look at this now. So we talked about, who we are. Just to give you a little bit of background, Mike, our regional manager, 49 years in the business. Darren Jones been with the Hingham water system for 26 years at the project, and he had our assistant project manager, was and I myself have been with Veolia my entire professional career for 32 years in the water industry. So Chris, you want to go to the next slide? So really when, the chairman talked about what is Veolia's obligation, certainly is to do all that we can to provide that O&M responsibility around the water system, including the distribution network as well as the treatment plant and storage tanks. We really looked at the event of June 19th to really a 4-phase kind of situation. And our first phase was to respond, to repair, and to recover. What we focused on as soon as we became aware of respond was to do whatever repairs we could find and do, and to be able to recover the system as quickly as possible. I can happily say that I think we're beyond phase 1. There's still some pockets out there that we're addressing as we get them. But for the most part, that respond, repair, and recover phase, I think. Next, we move into investigation. Now,
When were you first aware of it on June?
Excuse me, we'll be taking questions later.
sure, and I don't want to get ahead of the presentation, but we prefaced the presentation with a lot of questions that were given to us. One of them is that. So I do have a timeline that I'll be sharing with everyone in a minute. But I wanted to start with kind of where we started and kind of where we are today and where we're going to end up. So right now, we're in the investigation discovery phase. There's a lot of information available at the plant, out in the network, customer complaints. We're digging into a lot, and it's not just this team. There's an entire group of technical performance people and senior leaders within Veolia in the background on all of that assistance. We do appreciate the opportunity to come early in this process, and we're certainly prepared to answer all the questions we possibly can. But I will just say that there's still things we're discovering and need to discover and learn. So this is certainly not the final discussion on this. There'll be a much more probably comprehensive report and discussion to come when we move on through the phases. The next phase after that will be a diagnose and learn, right? Everything we learned, try to diagnose and understand it, so that then the final phase will be to adopt and deploy those lessons. That's really kind of the plan. Is this better? I'll talk a little about
Just shout, you can shout.
Well, I'm the voice 5. I usually don't have a problem getting heard. So, all right, Chris. So, any questions? I guess you have a question for you, but that's really the book. This next slide is a map. One of the questions you had is what was the area that was affected? We know from the customer complaints. We know from the information we have at the plant and in the network that the area that was impacted has to do with the Turkey Hill storage tank area, surface area. And that's that map.
Could you ask the presenter to put that on a full view?
Right. Chris, can you make it slide view? I think if you go to view show, it should.
Is that better?
Get rid of the thumbnails on the left.
Yeah, I think if you go to view show, Chris, probably show this.
How's that?
All right, so beginning on Wednesday, June 19th, the new holiday, June 19th, customers being notice discoloration in the drinking water system. Slides to come, you'll have that timeline, what we observed, what was happening, and then we decided what our steps were. Those customer complaints, those discoloration complaints we're getting continued on into Thursday, June 20th, and throughout the next 3 days. It was only until I'd say about midday Sunday that we really felt as though we had turned the corner, although, I would describe it more like a bell curve, kind of was real steep at the beginning and it's maybe over time tapered off, and that's completely understandable, reasonable given the average we gave in terms of the movement and discoloration, discolored water within the system. Okay, Chris. So initial indications. The image on the left is an actual screenshot of our SCADA system. It's showing the levels in the Turkey Hill tank over the period of time before the event and then during the event.
Could you just say what that is, the system?
So what that is it's a level indication of the Turkey Hill water tank in feet, in that elevation. And you can see to the left of the graph, each of those humps is a different day. So that's sort of the diurnal flow in that tank, or the tank elevation changing throughout the day. On the days completed, before the event and then the day of the event. And what I really want to point out to you is that that large dip at the far right side of that graph is June 19th. And what's interesting about that is the change in elevation on June 19th was significantly different than it had been before, well, that's in the day after. So we know from our instrumentation that we had a significant event of demand from that time during that exact same time compared to all the other nights before. In terms of significance, it was about a 4-foot difference. So on that particular day, we dropped 17 feet. The previous days and the days after, it was typically around 13 to 14. That 4-foot difference is very significant in terms of what was different about June 19th than the days before and the days after. That drop in elevation is through demand. It's withdrawal coming out of that tank. And when that demand was occurring, what was happening in the system was we were getting lower pressure, or at least variable pressure, and increased flow through the system. Those two things are the drivers behind stirring up sediment that's accumulated in the distribution system and making its way to the water and finding its way to sediments. So again, that's just a graphical illustration of what we saw on June 19th. That 4-foot differential from historical. That's 4 days. Hey, Chris. One of the big questions is, what was it called? You know, why did it happen? What's so unique about June 19th? I would like to be able to say it was that. You know, I'd like to be able to say it was a specific thing that we could point to and say, this is what happened. But we don't know that. And certainly all of the investigation we've done to date hasn't really pointed out a single event. So it's leading us to believe that it was a series or a combination. It was hot. Right? We know we were in the heat wave. People were responding to the heat wave probably with increased flood. We know it was a holiday. More people at home on holidays than they normally on a Wednesday. They probably go to work at the same time and the work will change. We know we had a water main break that we discovered on Thursday. And a 76-year-old cast iron pipe ahead of the trade control distribution. We know there was some additional system maintenance that was going on throughout the system, both in Cohasset and I believe in Hull. And then there were probably factors that we don't know that may have occurred. I know some of the complaints we got were, hey, I'm filling my swimming pool and the water. And we had several of those. So, you know, there's probably some activities going on in the network, things like that, that all, I think, in some total contributed to that big change and drop that we saw in that. But the investigation is far from complete. We've got our hydraulic modelers, we've got our engineers who are doing all the pieces that they have. We're reviewing our records, our staff report coming in from the field when we're out there. So that investigation is far from over. It's ongoing with the phase 2, and we'll be reporting findings as we find them, and then at the appropriate time sharing. Chris? All right, it's I think it's that woman's question about when did we know and when would we? So on Wednesday, June 19th, our operator on duty, our midnight operator, reported out at 6:12 to the plant manager that he observed that change in tank level, reported out to Darren, and our distribution supervisor arrived on site myself to assist in evaluating what was happening. Our plant manager and our assistant plant manager responded to the plant and were on site at 9:00. initial public notification that, hey, we got a demand issue going on. It happened at 10:18 in the morning. And that initial notification, because again, it was early on in our discovery of an event, was, hey, we're seeing a big demand, please reduce your usage. We have a screenshot of that went out through our warning system, our notification system, I should say. Then a second notice went out at 5:26, when we really started to understand and get complaints about discolored water, that, hey, we have a discolored water chemical. And again, we have got a copy of that notice that went out at 5:26. And those notices went out following our stakeholder contact list that's built into our existing emergency response plan. And we're going to talk a lot about communication. That's really a significant area for us to lean into immediately to try to improve and to promote. So that's the initial event and timeline. So again, we started receiving complaints Wednesday morning. The complaints increased in number and severity by Thursday. By Thursday at 8 a.m., our crews were dispatched to start what we call flowing hydrants to remove the discoloration. I think what's real important to understand about that activity is the very thing that you need to do to clear the sediment is the exact thing that causes the sediment to go in, and that is water usage. And so you have to be very diligent and follow strict procedures in order to flow enough water to remove discoloration, but not make the problem worse by introducing additional flows through the system to stir that sediment. Hydrants were chosen and crews were dispatched based on, where we saw the greatest pockets of complaints. So we were using the complaint line to help direct and guide our teams out to do the maximum we could to remove as much discoloration as would be required. So on Thursday, June 20th, 3 crews were out from 8 a.m. to 2 a.m. that morning. So the other crews were out responding to complaints, flowing hydrants, doing it in a very strategic and system-wide way. On Friday, June 21st, we sent 5 crews out at 8 a.m. Those crews worked until 8 p.m. that night. We had to break, we had to give people time to rest. We actually needed, and some of this guidance came directly from us in executive office, we needed the system to settle. Right, we had done a fair amount of flowing at that point. We really needed the system to settle. Saturday, 2 crews went out from 8 a.m. to 9:30 p.m. This is where we were kind of on the downside of that bell curve. Certainly not out of the woods, but certainly we began to see fewer and fewer complaints and more reports of clear water. On June 23rd, the Sunday, we had a crew working from 8 a.m. to 12, and at that point, we noticed the conditions had remarkably improved. So we suspended that flowing until at 12 p.m. And then we transitioned our crews to directing them to actual customer complaints at locations as they came. So we were able to take our crews and actually go to people's homes, clean faucets, drain water heaters, a whole bunch of whatever the complaint was. Crews were dispatched actually, and that continues today. So as we get complaints today, crews are out to help. I talked a little bit about flowing versus flushing. Again, what drives the reason for the discolored water is pressure and flow. If the pressure is maintained, that sediment stays where it's at. But when you reduce the pressure and then increase the flow, that stirs it up and then transmits that sediment through the system. When we were in the process of responding, we were very cognizant of the fact that we can't make it worse. It would only extend the problem. We estimated it was about a 50-hour event, and that's 50 hours too long. 1 hour was more, but we feel at least somewhat we reduced as much as possible. When you look at what the retention time through the system was, the 50 hours too long. But I think from from our analysis, it happened about as quick as we could make it happen, given the size and the breadth of the impact areas. I'll refer you back to that. Next slide. So again, these are just actual copies of and we can have these all there, of the messages that went out. Again, the first one went out at 10:12, 10:18 on Wednesday, and then at 5 o'clock. And then throughout the event, they notices using it's termed the notify system. It's a user opt-in system where all bill payers can opt in to receive these notices, and they're done through email, they're done through voicemail, and they're done through the website. And then we're also sending the same notices out to the WRWS warrant system. I believe it's the warrant system, right? But anyway, those messages were going to the commission,
Emergency stakeholder list.
the emergency stakeholders, thank you. And then that was being distributed to their stakeholder list. Now, we did discover that has to improve. I mean, we got all sorts of feedback, some positive, some negative, mostly negative about, you're telling me I'm being contacted too much, I don't even know what's going on. No one told me anything. And as we began to dig into the communication aspect of this, we learned that some users aren't even in the system because they don't get bills. So we've immediately taken the step to engage Chris Halloran, our communications lead, to help us improve that immediately. So what we've done as of, I think it was Monday or Sunday, we've already updated our emergency contact list. We've already been working with individual stakeholders like the town hall to get more updated information from them so we can bring it into our city. We've got a lot more work to do there. We all recognize that. One of the interesting things is there isn't really a strong social media communication platform here in this area. We are finding in our industry and throughout the world, throughout the United States, at least in our area of interest, that social media is a great way to get information. So Chris, I don't know if you want to step in here and talk a little bit about, some of the immediate things we've done on communication, but kind of how we can work collaboratively to improve that.
Absolutely. I mean, yeah, as John mentioned, we need to find better ways to get the word out effectively in the community. We are our system as a private operator limits our communication abilities, and that we have to rely on community stakeholders to assist us with that. We can only get access to the information that we have for bill payers. We have their emails, we have their phone numbers. If they're landlords, we don't have the tenants, and so on. So we do need to find, and this is a great opportunity for us to get together and decide some better ways of getting the word out in the community, whether it's online forums, local media outlets, however we can do this. This is absolutely a part that we need to improve right away, and can be very easily done with interactive input from the community.
It's critically important that you get the information you need when you need it in a timely way so that you can make decisions. And then you can also listen and respond to our suggestions on what we should be doing and not doing during these types of minutes. Next slide.
John, do you mind for example, right in front of the owl and switching it out? The folks,
I do apologize. I'm not really great at this stuff, so.
the folks online are having trouble. If you don't mind, like, maybe literally right here, and then everyone. It isn't.
One of the questions that came up, well, obviously we've got a great local team, very knowledgeable about the system. What kind of support will they get? I can tell you that on the notice that Darren got, I got the notice, Mike got the notice, and we immediately engaged our teams. That included the entire technical performance team of Veolia North America, which is a large, vast group of water and wastewater professionals, engineers, and they work.
We're gonna move the hour, because now people online have a great view of the waste.
Well, it's not gonna be a problem.
That's it. There we go.
Is this all right?
Yeah.
Is this all part of making me a little?
No, I apologize for all the technical difficulties. We usually have a different setup in the room that wasn't available today. So thank you guys for your patience online and in the room.
Yeah, I think when we get to the questions and answers, perhaps, I'll stay still. So our technical performance team has been working with the local team from day one, continues to work with them on, throughout this event and continue. They're really helping us move into that second phase of, well, besides helping us manage through the recovery phase and the response phase, they're now really leaning into how to investigate, what happened and what you can do, more importantly, to prevent it from ever happening again, or at least reduce the likelihood. Chris, our communications department, fantastic, dove right in, really assisted the team. One of the things that the support that the local teams need is to take away some of the burden so that they can focus on actually addressing the problem. And that's really what the support that Veolia brings to our local teams. And then all the way up to the top of the organization, President of Veolia North America is aware of what's happening, has been aware of what's happening, offered whatever resources we needed in order to rectify the problems as quick as possible. So one of the questions that was asked is, does this happen elsewhere? Unfortunately, yes, it does. It happens. It's actually happened in this system. Certainly not to the extent we've seen, but it's a fairly, I don't want to say routine occurrence, but it happens. Sediment in the system is a naturally occurring activity. It just happens. We don't introduce the sediment. It collects inside the system. It particularly happens in systems that are old, that have older infrastructure, pipes that have been in the ground a very long time and have been in service for a long time, of which your system is one. How do you mitigate these issues? The first and best way to do it is to have a robust and effective flushing program. To be able to flush the sediment out over time in a controlled way. And we do have a flushing program in place here in Hingham, in the Hingham system. We are in the process and had been rolling out a unidirectional flushing system, which is going to start up in earnest in the fall, which is when we typically do flushing, because we want to be respectful of demand that occurs during the summer. Mike, you want to just talk a little bit, if you could, about maybe the difference between what we're currently doing in flushing and the benefits of a unidirectional flushing?
Sure. So currently, we're performing conventional flushing. Start at the source, the treatment plant, and we work our way out to the system. Flush, pull clean water in, flush out what sediment we can. It's good, but it's not great. So we've been in the process of our hydraulic model. We're developing a unidirectional flushing program, which is he'll set up sequences where we'll be on a street, we'll close certain valves, flow certain hydrants, and the purpose behind that is to increase the velocity in the pipe. Through working with the hydraulic model, he tells us which valves operate, and so we increase that velocity, scour the pipe better, clean it better, and avoid problems like this. Get a cleaner system out there.
Yeah, it's done, and the reason it has to be modeled that is so we don't create a problem, but we're able to isolate the area that we're dealing with and flush it, I guess Mike described, more effectively than just your typical flushing program that's in place. The other thing is you got to assess and implement infrastructure upgrades. I mean, the systems are old, they need investment. It's not necessarily unique to this system, but, throughout the United States, that, we've got a very old and aged infrastructure. You probably see it all over the news. I know there's been lots of legislation passed in Congress for communities to take advantage of funding to address some of this aging infrastructure. But just generally throughout the industry, it's been neglected over time. I mean, it really, it's underground, it's out of sight. Sure, it's a problem now, and we're all aware of it now. But when things are good and quiet, other things take oftentimes higher priority or more of a priority. But hopefully that is changing. We're seeing a change in the industry, and certainly in our government's responses to infrastructure. current water stats, I think the thing everyone's interested in. So right now, the number of complaints are way down. Certainly, they're back into like a normal kind of manageable level. We still are seeing isolated pockets within the residential systems. Again, the process we went through in the last, week of flushing and flowing, our system has definitely reduced and removed the majority of discolored water from the system. From the very onset, before, during, and after, and continually, the treatment plant itself has been putting clear source water into the system constantly. So for every drop of water that's been leaving the system, fresh, clear water has been going into the system, and that has not changed from day one. So you can be assured that the water that we're introducing into the system is meeting all of our standards, and has been. And we'll continue. So water quality, big question about what was the water quality at the time of the event. We'll kind of break these up into two. The primary concern of drinking water, things that affect acutely people's health and welfare, is bacteria. That's the primary concern of water systems. We can assure the residents that at no time did any of our disinfection systems were compromised whatsoever. And in fact, the data for coliform testing prior to the event, time of the event, and subsequent from the event have shown absent bacteria across the board. There's been no samples taken that had any coliform present. The discolored water primarily is iron and manganese, naturally occurring sediment that creates that discoloration. The testing we've done on iron, and we've shared the data, and we'll make it available. It's all publicly available. Shows that all the iron levels that we sampled as late as Monday show the iron levels below the mass DEP site circulation. For manganese, out of the 10 sites, 2 were slightly above that limit of 0.05, and they were at 0.01, above the 0.5. So really close to that. We followed mass DEP guidelines throughout this event. We were in constant communication with them, following their directions, getting great input, like I said, from Russell and his group, our technical group, and mass DEP. But the water was brown, and I don't think anybody in this room, or probably anybody online, wants to drink brown water. So, obviously our efforts were to maximize as much of that removal as possible and as quickly a way possible, so that you weren't faced with the choice of having to drink the brown water. Next slide, Chris. Immediate actions. What did we do? What have we done? What have we done immediately? So we certainly have addressed and amended our emergency response plan to update all of the contact information that was lacking in what was provided to us initially. That emergency response plan is a very comprehensive document, which is shared with the board. It involves all sorts of different types of emergencies, not just discolored water, but what happens, vandalism, so just a whole host of events that could possibly occur within a water system. We immediately have made adjustments to that Turkey Hill water tank elevation set. So there's a set point for high level and there's a set point for low level. And those are along, and then we try to operate within that band of space. Given what we just experienced and how quickly that 4 feet of delta occurred, we've adjusted those set points so that that band is smaller. Now you need a band of space in the tank operation because you have to turn that water over. You can't allow that storage tank to sit full at all times because the water will then age. But we have shortened that window so that our treatment plant can respond even faster if we start to see a drop in elevation. Now, again, it never had us throughout, before the event, after the event, that the set points seemed to be fine and we went through those diurnal changes without issue. But clearly, since we had an issue, you can't just assume that those are no longer appropriate. So we've made that adjustment. Chris spoke, and I will say again, we work collaboratively on communications and protocols amongst all the stakeholders, and that's an ongoing process. Chris is helping us find what is the most effective outreach opportunity, what is the best way to enhance our community outreach. We talked a little bit about TMP developing that unidirectional flushing plan. We've expedited that so that we're ready even before the fall. And then we're continually working with the commission and Russell on making recommended improvements to critical infrastructure. One of the things that what we've seen in other communities that has been beneficial is there's now a lot more technology out there, particularly for monitoring, so that we get information from the system that we can respond to quicker and faster. Things like pressure, chlorine residual, and others. So we're certainly going to make recommendations to possibly deploy some of that newer technology out into the system so that we can get more information in real time. And then also help us troubleshoot other issues that might. That's my presentation.
Thank you. Would you like me to continue to stay? No, okay. So, so at this point, we have a full board of water commissioners here. Liz Klein is in person and Bill Ramsey is participating remotely. And I'm going to turn it over to questions first, Liz Klein, and then to Bill. Bill, can you hear okay? Okay, great. Liz, please.
Excellent. Thank you, Joe. Thank you, John, for taking us through that, and I appreciate you going through the timeline. That's certainly something we have been concerned with, and certainly have heard from our residents. So adjusting the tank monitoring and that alarm set point, do you think that will put us in a good position to be able to react more quickly?
Sure, I think it will reduce the time in which the plant will speed that way.
Changing the tank flow setting alarms, whether we're currently changing to a higher set point, give the operators more time to react, more time to increase the flows. Increasing the flows needs to be done gradually. So we've changed those set points from a level of 47 feet to 52 feet to allow operators time to make the adjustments necessary.
Okay. Thank you, Darren. So certainly one of my concerns was, how did we not know about this immediately and just the time it took to respond? So I appreciate you making those adjustments. It sounds like that will help. Is there anything that you see that we should be doing in addition, especially as we go into the 4th of July holiday? We're expecting more of a heat wave. Are there other things that we should be doing to prevent this from happening again next week?
Well, I think education is always important. And I think educating the public on this event and the impacts that everyday use can have. I mean, we should be practicing conservation throughout, even without being asked. But certainly even more importantly on holidays, when we know that most people are home, so the demand on the system is going to increase. Is certainly something that we should be participating in. I think getting the word out faster and to more people, I think will go a long way to, because I know everybody is going to respond if asked, right? I mean, we all care about it, drinking. So I know when the request goes out to conserve, if it goes to the maximum number of people, I'm very confident most people will hear that. But I think education between now and even July 4th, I think is crucial and helpful. Avoid filling swimming pools on holidays, and just avoid it.
Yeah, and obviously we'll do more, like you were saying, the research and due diligence to figure out what else were contributing factors possibly. Certainly communication is an issue. I think that is highlighted here, that there was a breakdown in the process, and we need to work very closely with you over the next several days to understand who's on the stakeholder list, who are the bill payers, some people are getting phones, some are getting emails, some are getting texts, some are getting none. Social media, I agree with you that that can be a very productive way to get out information. We're also seeing a lot of misinformation on social media pages, so that's something we'll need to be very conscious of, and because that could be dangerous for everybody. So that I think is my biggest takeaway, that we need to improve the communications and make sure that we're just working more closely together on that. You also mentioned infrastructure improvements and municipal government being slow to implement those. We certainly are working our hardest and taking recommendations from Russ. As I'm sure you know, town meeting just approved a new tank and we're moving forward with that. Are there other recommendations for us on ways to improve infrastructure that we're not thinking of?
Well, certainly, replacement of aged equipment, particularly that underground is important, planning for that. As I mentioned, there is new emerging technology on network distribution monitoring that we can work with the board on presenting on. Other communities that are doing that sort of thing, I think Jersey City, for women, or Hoboken, Chris Rico, is really deployed a sun distribution throughout their network. They're playing a lot of water main breaks and the time to respond to those. Oftentimes when you have a water main break, you find it by a customer or a neighbor reporting, hey, I got water bubbling up in the street. Deploying technology will alert us to it before they even see it. So there's things like that, I think, and they're relative, I mean, they're not free, but they're relatively inexpensive compared to building a new water tank.
Okay, yeah, we did, well, I think we probably all agree we'd appreciate that. We're certainly looking to you and your expertise on the operations and how to improve the infrastructure. So we're very open and eager to learn more about that. And maybe Russ, do you mind just describing your role and what the Rear River Water System staff does relative to Veolia, just so people understand the roles and responsibilities?
Stand up, sir. So as the managing director of the water system, it's my job to oversee the contract with Veolia, but then also be in charge of capital improvements. So we have a 10-year plan for capital improvements. I take that 10-year plan with Veolia's help. We look at some stuff, but then it's my job to execute that plan with Brian, who's the assistant superintendent, to make sure that that plan gets executed. Veolia is solely responsible for the operation and maintenance of the system, but again, we oversee that contract. And then we also have the big part in the capital improvement plan. We do all work together when there's something like this happens, and we all did. We kept talking about it, what to do. And I'm glad you brought up that technology, John, because I just went to a seminar on 2 Thursdays ago, and I talked to the guy afterwards, so we can all have that conversation in a couple of weeks that they're going to come in and actually show it to us. And then we'll go from there. So that technology does help a lot with getting us a better warning and a bigger, faster warning than we already get right now from just people calling in. We will also work together on a new email address for water quality, because calling customer service became a big problem because there's only 4 people in that office, and it just became inundated for them. So we're going to work on some type of better way for people to get to us on water quality. That way they don't have to wait on calls. And we did do that by handing out our water operations email, but that had a different purpose in life. So I want to get back to that purpose. So we will be working with IT and get a new email address up for everybody to use when they have, discolored water or other water quality issues. So that's what it is.
Excellent, thank you. And thank you for bringing up the water quality. Certainly, that's a huge concern. This type of incident ranges from inconvenient to terrifying, right? If you think your water is not safe or safe to drink. So thank you for going through those statistics. I know we're constantly testing the water. Actually, maybe Darren, could you talk about that? How the water is tested? Is it every 15 seconds or something? Just so you can understand that.
So the drinking plant is monitored 24/7 by licensed operators. And we have analyzers that are analyzing chlorine, pH, turbidity, fluoride, and other different parameters. Every 15 seconds, they're giving real life data to SCADA. It's being recorded, and the operators are seeing this. They all have set points and alarms to make the operators aware of something they need to address. or if they need to call somebody in, it's addressed very quickly.
Right.
When Turkey Hill tank came out, it was acknowledged in less than a minute.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. That's it. Thank you, Jeff.
Before I turn it over to Bill, just a couple additions. When this town acquired water company, for one of the stated purposes was to address the capital improvement needs. And Russ has really been aggressive with us, and we have been aggressively pursuing the schedule. So you mentioned the capital improvements, and this board is committed to moving that forward. You mentioned the guidelines or the concerns about water conservation. I think you may hear an attitudinal question, which is, we're not in a water shortage. Why should we conserve? And so I think the communication there is important because the need for conservation goes beyond the question of whether or not there's a drought. It's a question of making sure that the water system is operating properly. And we need to do a better job in communicating that. And then finally, before I turn over to Bill, in terms of communication, you will hear later from the Citizens Advisory Board. They are the outreach directly to the residents in the three towns, Hingham, Hull, and Cohasset. And I want to make sure that they're included so that communications go both ways, from you to them and from them to you, because they are a direct link to the users. So you'll hear from them like that in a couple minutes. But at this point, Bill Ramsey, the floor is yours.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Joe. All right. I do have a couple questions. I'm going to start with my my biggest concern, which is if the Turkey Hill levels dropped from 57 to 39 at 3 a.m., why did it take 3 hours for the employee in charge to notify plant leadership that the levels had dropped to a dangerously low level? 3 hours is a long time.
So, the drop in the tanks, it happens typically at 3 o'clock in the morning, the drop in the tanks it starts dropping, the sprinklers are coming on, and we typically see that, and usually it stops, it drops off. So by 6 or so in the morning, or maybe earlier, it drops off. This continued to drop to a point where it's got to the low limits. So like 509, the low limit was given to the operators. And then that's when everything started in motion from there.
So it was typical.
You can just stand so people
Yeah.
can hear.
So basically what he's saying is that it was typical. There wasn't anything unusual at 3 a.m. The trend was what we would expect to see. And then when it became a problem, that's when the information was reported to us.
But
So, remember,
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Darren. Sorry. Go ahead.
so if we remember that graph that we saw a dip, then we saw a dip. So that was a 13-foot drop on a Monday, 13-foot drop on a Tuesday. Then on a Wednesday, we would have expected to stop at 13 feet. That's a typical drop in tank level. This continued to drop 17 feet. Did not stop until we put the mandatory restrictions in place.
When I'm not sure if you call it operator in charge or what the who's in charge. It's 24. We have 24-hour operations at the plant, correct?
Correct.
What time does the night shift come on? Midnight to 8?
11 o'clock p.m.
11 p.m. to what, 7 a.m.?
Yes.
Okay. When that operator in charge came on shift at 11 o'clock on the night of the 18th, was he or she notified, hey, we have high temperatures, we have increased usage, keep a close eye on these levels? I mean, I gotta think that people had to be briefed on the fact that, hey, we need to be very careful here because it's dropping more than average and temperatures are up and usage is up. Did that happen?
Tanks were not dropping at 11 p.m. The tanks were building.
Well, I guess the way we can answer it is Yes, there are policies and procedures in place for our operators to follow and to respond to tank drops. And those are standard and typical throughout our day-to-day activities. We've been through holidays. They've been through holidays in the past. There's a very seasoned staff. The set points, the alarm set points are set to the point where it alerts the operator, even if he's not paying or she is not paying attention. That's what they're designed to do. I think it was the expectation of all of us and everybody that it was going to be a fairly typical day, holiday that we used to experience. Now, that didn't happen. We're not suggesting that something didn't happen, and we've adjusted since then, certainly. But, I think the operators know, and they've been trained that as the tanks begin to drop, you begin to increase your flow. You don't want to flow too fast because that could create excessive pressure in the system and create a whole host of other problems, main breaks, et cetera. But it was when the operator reached a point in time where his experience and his ability to say something isn't right is when he made the call. And that's when he called less than an hour after, he reached that point. When he got the alarm as Darren said, at 5 change in the morning, he answered it within a minute. So he was on duty, he was paying attention. And that's when he brought in, the senior leaders of that organization, Darren and Leanne, the distribution, and who are even far greater experienced and licensed to be able to make informed decisions about it. So, I just don't want the impression to be that, it happened at 3 and we kind of folded our arms and sat back for 3 hours before someone did something. That's really not what happened. But hey, we learned something. We learned something we didn't know on June 18th. And we're making adjustments going forward. And those adjustments are in place in preparing for July 4th. Now, will there be a heightened awareness July 4th? You better believe it, to the point where we may even bring additional people on staff or have them stand by. And it's a holiday, right? So we want to afford people time off to enjoy their family time and their off. We're talking about what we need to do to stand up on July 4th in the event that we do have we don't want it, we don't expect it. But our level of our heightened awareness is up. Sure.
And I should go ahead.
Yeah, so I just wanted, before I lost track of, so the alerts on the SCADA system is to alert the operator. Because the operator is his eyes are not trained on the SCADA system the entire time he's working. He's in the lab, he's running chlorine, turbidity, pH, constantly running tests to 150 samples and testing he's doing throughout his 8-hour shift. There was a SCADA silent audible alarm, or any alarms that go off, that alert the operator to, hey, come over here and look at this. So it took him a minute to get over and look at the tank level. Just wanted to.
And also performing maintenance in the treatment plant as well.
And also this maintenance in the plant, yes.
So let me follow up with that. Thank you for the answer. Let me follow up with that. So if the temperature, if the heat wave we experienced last week was not atypical and the associated usage was not atypical and the 13-foot drop is not atypical, when does the alarm go off? At 14, 15, 16 feet? I mean, I got to think that if that operator, the operator in charge is monitoring those levels and it comes to 13, which I think I heard you say is a typical drop, then does the alarm sound at 15 or when?
So the pH, the tank levels, 13 feet drop, so there's still 49 feet in the tank, which is adequate because you want tank turnover, as John had mentioned. When it dropped to 17 feet, now you were at 47 feet, and then it kept dropping and dropping, and that's when the low alarm was off. So I use my hand a lot.
I just want to clarify as well, as this is dropping, they are feeding more water into the system. It got to a point where he couldn't feed enough water fast enough to keep up with the usage. Does that maybe make a connection that isn't being understood at this point? That it wasn't that he waited till it dropped 13 feet to start filling it. He was filling the tank as this was happening, starting at 3 a.m. But you can only move so much water from the plant to the tank at a time without causing a disruption. Is that helpful?
It is, and that leads me to my next question. So the hydraulic disturbance that you quoted in one of your slides is the increased flow, did that cause the sedimentation in water? And was that from the bottom of the tank or was it from the pipes?
It wasn't from the tank. Two things caused discoloration, sediment going to the water. Increased flow and less pressure. So those two things, either or both, combine to create sediment being stirred up in the pipes. So the sediment is in the network, and that's when we flush the network, the pipes basically. Right?
The tank was cleaned last year?
Yes.
Yes, the tank was cleaned last year. Sediment came from the distribution mains.
Okay.
All right,
And it's actually occurring over time. It's not, it just occurs over time. It's in the system now. I mean, you have sediment in your system today. It's just an ongoing battle to remove as much as possible with a flushing program. That's the only way it's getting out.
right. I've got a bunch of other questions. I'm going to follow up with you guys on email. I don't want to monopolize anybody's time, but I do have one last one. Can you walk us and the public through what steps are now in place so that when we get another heat wave in July or August, this won't happen again? I just want to be clear that we have operating procedures in place that are going to prevent this from happening again. And if you could just go over those one more time, I'll yield my time to other people.
Sure. I'm not going to say this is never going to happen again. I couldn't make that statement. What we put in place since this event is we've changed the tank elevation of Turkey Hill so that we have more time to hopefully react to an unusual demand issue. We are instituting a unidirectional flushing program starting in the fall, which will hopefully will be a better way of flushing your system going forward. We have a heightened awareness, particularly as 4th of July is a football. The teams obviously are communicating, all of our staff know what's been happening. There are other things that can cause discoloration. And in fact, in this event, we keep using the term it was a demand issue because we can't find one single other event that we could point to that's what did it. If it was a 30-inch main that broke in the middle of the street and we were losing water fast enough that we could point to that would be, but we don't have that here. What we believe at this time, and the investigation is ongoing, is that it was a series of activities going on. Again, a holiday, excessive heat. We had a little bit of maintenance going on in certain areas. We did have a minor main break on the line to the Turkey Hill system. So I don't think it was one specific thing. But we don't know just yet. We're investigating, we're looking, we're reviewing records, we're reviewing where the complaints came in, where were they centered around, where was the first indication. That will help us guide our investigation.
Right,
But we have a main,
I'm sorry,
and it's
go ahead.
be a discoloration event. Absolutely.
All right, the balance of my questions I'll submit over email. I'm going to give other people a chance to ask. Thank you, guys.
So if I can just follow up with Bill's questions, I just want to, I think I have a sense of where he's going, which is you monitor the level. Do you monitor the rate of change? So that if there's an accelerated rate of change that's atypical, that will trigger an alarm. It's not just the drop, but it's actually the rate of change.
Yes,
I think that's a concern. And what I heard Bill asking is, well, if you saw the drop, I understand it didn't reach that level, but it was dropping at a faster rate than you should normally expect. Does that rate of change trigger an alarm?
So it does trigger an alarm, the flow change. The flow change, you're expecting it to slow by early morning, it stops. The sprinklers all seem to come on at 3 o'clock. So we expect that. So, what's happening is, so you have, just for numbers, you have 2,000 gallons going through the distribution pipes. It's a really hot day, people are using higher demand. Now you pull 4,000 gallons through that pipe that was used to seeing 2,000. So, and we're increasing our flow to the plant to try and meet that, but you have to do that gradually so you don't cause treatment issues, plant issues, or breaks coming from the plant.
And the other thing I'll add is if you look at the curve, it wasn't a spike. It was a you could see the graph. It was gradual, but it didn't bottom out on normal
Right,
ground.
but I think the slope was actually steeper than in other days, and that would have been a warning. So I'm just asking whether.
No, it's certainly something we're looking into. I mean, again, it was atypical. The alarms worked when they were triggered to work, the operator responded. We certainly have learned something that we didn't know on June 18th. That's right.
Okay, so at this point, I'm gonna turn it over to you. Where River Water System Citizens Advisory Board, just so people understand the mission of that board, was formed for the purpose of assisting the ratepayers of the water system and advising and informing the water superintendent and this board of concerns of issues raised by ratepayers of the water system. So with that, I see the chair, Stephen Weiss, please.
So John, I want to first thank you for your presentation. It was quite comprehensive. Living in Hingham, one of the things that we are blessed with is an incredibly high talent level of people. We're used to when our electricity goes out, that Hingham Light turns the lights back on within an hour or a couple of hours. And that during that period of time, we can understand how long it's going to take for those lights to come back on. Your explanation that 50 hours is a minimal amount of time to complete the removal of the most of this coloration sounds logical on a technical level. But when a resident hears that it's going to take 50 hours to not have clean water, it's catastrophic. What's worse was not just the discoloration of the water, but you brought it up and Joe brought it up in his presentation. The communication was an abject failure. Now, I happen to be opted in to the system because we're all board, members of this committee. We were involved with Russell designing the bills and seeing the new website. But this became a whole town emergency, not just the people who were opted in. And so I got lots of emails and messages, but every time I went on Facebook or another message board, I realized how much of the town had no idea what was going on. And furthermore, and this is a larger issue than Veolia, once we knew that there was a town issue, how information was communicated to residents of the town. Distribution of water was decided upon, but only people who saw those messages knew that they could go and get water. Why weren't the electronic signs deployed to announce that the water was being distributed and that we were putting a water emergency into effect and going to phase 2 of water restrictions, which I also don't think most people know actually happened. It was on Monday, right, Russ? So we got that message, right? On Monday, on Saturday, Saturday. So on Saturday, I received the notification, but I don't know how many people received it. There has to be a better way when something town-wide happens, regardless of whether someone spent the time to go on the website and opt in, to know what's going on in the town and what has to happen. Maybe there's a reverse 911 or something. There has to be a way to communicate to the residents of the town. This was relative to what emergencies could happen, minor. It was a 50-hour fiasco for people who were getting groundwater. But there are other emergencies that happen that could require even more communications to the town. So boards like ours need to be activated directly, and that didn't happen. The other piece I want to bring up is how our vulnerable populations were taken care of, because they were taken care of by accident. Members of the Commission on Disabilities reacted because they saw on Facebook or heard things were happening. But again, they were not formally asked to get involved in helping those populations. I don't know how seniors who couldn't get out of their house got water if they needed it. And so it's a bigger issue than Veolia. This is a town-wide issue. And I appreciate the update, but I think there's a lot that has to happen to make sure that not just the water issue doesn't happen again, but that communication from the town administration to the population is vastly improved. So I'm going to turn over to other members of the committee.
If I
Yeah, go ahead.
I just want to say that on behalf of my organization, whatever role we can play to assist you in that, you have a full commitment.
Great.
So, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, John, sorry, if I can respond as well, this is the area that I concentrate in. And I'm looking forward to working with you in particular, because as we've described it in some of our meetings, Veolia is the trunk of a communications tree. And so we have the information and we spread it to the branches, but we definitely need those branches to work effectively. And, if I can work with you and if we can identify other channels to get this information out, effective channels. You're talking about social media platforms or social media forums. I would love to get your input on that and find out which ones we need to target, how we can do that most effectively, because that's how Ms. Klein spoke about misinformation on social media, and that's a huge problem. What's necessary to combat that is an assertive presence on social media by an authoritative outlet, and I'd love to work with you to get that done. So thank you for bringing it up.
Before, so we have Chief Murphy here. If you want to address the reverse 911 and how emergency people are dealt with.
I guess it kind of makes a little bit of both. So, good afternoon for those of you that don't know me. I'm Steve Murphy. I'm the fire chief, also the town's emergency management director. So in this situation, we did discuss the possible use of a reverse 911 system. The town does not have a contract with that particular, but we have access to it through Plymouth County Sheriff's Department. The problem with most systems like this, a reverse 911 system, is that many years ago, it worked great when people had house phones. But with cell phones, numbers aren't automatically in that system. It has to be an opt-in type of system. So many communities that have those find some success, but it's limited usually. So we discussed that and we felt that, between the messaging from Veolia and from the town was sufficient. In retrospect, looking at this is one of the things that we're looking at as well, as to how to improve that. I can tell you that there are other systems, but they're more limited on what they can do. For example, there's the federal system, which is called IPOS, which is Integrated Public Warning System. That's when everyone in the room gets their phone going off at the same time for things like Amber Alerts and everything else. Those are not opt-in systems. Everyone is required to be part of those. But in Massachusetts, that's something that has to go through Mass Emergency Management Agency. We have done those beforehand. Specifically, the last time we did it was with the fire on Man Street. We notified the residents in the area to check the mulch bed. And we also had it at the shipyard incident a few years ago with the hostage situation. So we have access to that, but usually under MEMA, those are restricted to more emergent situations. And that's when you get the hurricane notifications and everything else. That's through the other system. But we do have access to it. We've discussed those. So that's part of our plan, is to figure out how we can do it better the next time.
Thank you.
Just one second. To go on what the chief was saying, but the operating systems are what is available to all of us right now, because we can't just take people's information and put them in a system, and we can't do that. We can't pull your information out of CC&B and put it in a system. You have to opt in because that's your own personal information, so we just can't take it and use it. Like Chief was saying, with the federal one, they don't care if you're mad if they take your information, but we cannot do that by law. We cannot take your information out of our system. That is why we keep continuing asking people to opt in. You have to opt in. If you want to get notifications of everything that's going on in the water system, you have to opt into the system, because again, we just can't take it. I can't go to the town and take your home phone numbers and all your phone numbers out of the town system either. So the opt-in is all we got. Code Red, I think it's a Code Red one. So when I first got to town, when I first got hired, I opted into Code Red because I was wondering how everybody was hearing this stuff, and someone told me, oh, you got to opt into Code Red. So I did it myself using our address because I didn't have a Hingham address. But it really is important that people opt in for now because every other system out there is absolutely, not able to do it unless you give us your information. You have to voluntarily give us all your information. So we really need people to opt in so that we can keep up to date. As far as, social media, Michelle did post it on, I don't know what social media we have, on the town's Facebook page. We don't have our own Facebook page. We gotta discuss that problem, go forward with it. But again, Michelle was posting everything that we put out there on the town's Facebook page. So it's really the opt-in is the most important thing. If you want to know what's going on, you have to absolutely opt into this so that we can go forward and make sure everyone gets every piece of information that we put out for the water system.
But Russ, my understanding is that you need to opt in by going to the billing page. And if you don't get a bill, if you are in an apartment house and you're paying rent and water's included, or it's billed to somebody else, how do you opt in?
I can address that.
Yeah, so we're gonna,
Yeah, I
we've
can
already
address
talked.
that. So we can, in addition to the current system that we have now for the water department directly, this does not come, this wouldn't cover town communications just through the Veolia's system notification. We can upload CSV files to, the way it works is that we have a circle on the map. That's, over the past couple of days, everything has been the entire system. That's what the geography of these notifications have been going out to. In addition to the residents that are represented on that map, we can upload CSV files. We have one for each town and for every stakeholder that we've been given to date, for Hull, Hingham, and North Cohasset. So if there's something that is just happening in Hull, we don't have to alert the whole system. We make sure that the Hull stakeholders have that. We already have the with Cohasset and Hingham both to update those. We are waiting to hear back from Hull. So that is how we can do that. The way that we solve the problem of the non-bill payer is to have a CSV file of people who do opt in and send an email to our customer service email, and we will send out notification about this. We'll make it available on the website, hopefully work with the landlords and single payer addresses to get this information out, that they can send an email, and that's all they really need to do, and we can add them to a CSV file so that that goes out by town with every single notification. That's an easy fix. That's something we can do immediately. Great.
Yeah. Yes, please. Are you sure?
I'm
Fine. Finally. I won't have you sit down.
Sorry, Chuck.
All right, no, it's cool. Hey,
You can introduce yourself. to people.
my name is Chuck Colvin. I'm on the Citizens Advisory Board for the water company. I'm a Hingham resident. I drink the water, bottles right there. People say to me, why aren't you drinking bottled water? I drink water from the tap.
Me too.
I wanted to actually compliment everyone that's spoken so far. Veolia, thank you for all the information you've given us. Echoing what Stephen said, town of Hingham comes together, and when we have emergencies, I know the fire department, the police department, the water department all works together. So really, we're all here to find solutions. And interesting, one point that we brought up, and if you look, the week of the 19th, it was Juneteenth and all that. We say like, oh, it was typical with that heat waves. Well, actually, it wasn't typical. Okay, in my observation. Right before one of my best friend's dad passed away, so I had a funeral to go to, and like today I didn't wear my coat because it was going to be the hottest day of the year, 98 degrees. Right before that, it was freezing and it was cold, and so interesting. So I think the heat wave kind of came in real quick, okay? And I can't really claim to have knowing what everybody was thinking, but a couple other things that happened that I just asked about counterparts of Hull. You remember Hull got shut down to the beach? Wollaston Beach closed, everybody went to Hull. So, and it was hot as heck. So I think the whole perfect storm thing, I think a lot of people turned on their sprinkler systems. I think we had a lot of demand. I'm not saying that was the problem, but really we had a real spike that came real quick. And so I think really you need to take a look at like that. That was an event that maybe helped to trip this, and it was unusual. I think we also have other things going on. The people in the town, like myself, I'm lucky enough to live in a section where I've been here since 2000. I've never had running water, but I know looking back at our announcements, we have had running water. there's been like little pockets and stuff, but it hasn't been affected by it. So something really happened. It was a perfect storm and it all happened. And I think listening to you guys, you're actually addressing some things like you're gonna adjust the tank level. Maybe seasonally you need to take a look at that. So I think it was a little bit different. And I think we're looking for solutions here. And the big thing is education. The other thing is I'm sitting here and I got an 84-year-old neighbor. Frank's always like, it's been raining like heck, the wells are full, why are they telling us to why are they telling us not to use the water? Because what happened right here, like the water does it, and I was in the water industry. I'm actually older than I look. And I know that it's fire protection and it's drinking water. And I know like the whole thing about keeping it moving, you gotta keep it fresh and all. There's all kinds of rules and regulations that you guys follow the rules, you're great at. And so I think we really did have a kind of a perfect storm to work here. So getting back to all that communication, one of the big things is that we did get to communicate with the people. Well, communicating with people, we can't control what people do, but people want to understand. So these people that want to water their lawns and do all this stuff, I think what we need to do is explain to them. Like this was an example where there was peak usage. There was, I'm not saying to make excuses, but there was peak usage. This happened. This caused the sentiment. So like, and I'm a sales guy, so I'm always looking for solutions. And and I always look at simple stuff. So like you said, like pressure and flow. So that's the big thing. We had a lot of we had a drop in pressure. We had a lot of flow. Well, that's what happened. And did it come from the tank? That was my question. You answered it. It didn't come from the tank. You could drain the tank. Are you draining out the tank? Clean the tank? Yes, you do. Okay, great. It came from the system. So I think one of the things we need to do is educate our people. It was an event, and I'm not going to be able to, well, maybe I'll be part of it, crafting. It was an event where it was cold, it was warm, it hit all at once. And interesting, an example, Nantasket Beach was, the town of Hull was closed. They wouldn't let people go to the beach because of the influx of people going in. Did everybody remember that? So that was a crazy day. And so like, demand might have went up, that kind of helped, demand went up. Everybody else wanted to turn the sprinklers on. Like I'm driving here today, right up Central Street, my way here, somebody has a sprinkler system on their front lawn. I'm like, what should I do? I know Russ, you're awesome. And I guess I want to echo a positive part. Russ is an on the street, hands-on guy. If something's going on, you're feet on the street, take care of these things. And I think there's so many, well, I'll save a lot of that. So what's the solution, Chuck? You're telling us all this kind of stuff. Today, how do we used to learn about these things? Like I'm 62. Listening to the radio, listen to the TV, everybody listens to that. Nobody does that anymore. It's about social media. And I know social media because I listen to a lot of town meetings, and that's one of the things, is how do we communicate? Well, the great thing is Chris, you're not, Chris is virtual, he's not even in a room with us, he's running our presentation. It's great to hear that he wants to reach out to social media. So apparently you've done it in other places and it might work. And you're saying there's no social media presence in Hingham. Wrong, okay? I live in Hingham. I spend time in Hull. I enjoy all kind of things. I'm on some of the Hull like Hull happenings, Hull this, Hull that, and I'm on the Hingham pin board and all these other. I don't. What's the big list I have? I don't know. I know some people that are super users, but I think that's one of our solutions is to get a listing of the social media sites. And we want to think like, well, we want to, people that opt in to get the information. Well, great. I get the phone calls, and since on social media I saw we having a problem, I was like, instead of just like letting it go to voicemail, I've listened to a few. I listened to one today at like 12:30. I got one. We're still having problems. I get that. I guess I never signed up for the emails, but whatever. But I think that the solution is going to be to get the listing of some of a lot of the social media sites that we use now. And unfortunately, it's a moving target. So as we get new ones, we need to distribute that out. And I think, some of the folks in town, and since we're part of the advisory board, the citizens board, that we can be part of that. Maybe we'll help whoever's in the town looking into this right now. Let's make that list and let's take the Weir River Water Company and let's make that a success story of how we're going to communicate. And I think we need to, communications, number one, education, what happened, what we did. If people want to know what happened, they can go on the website. I go on the website. Like, if people want to go on the website, Veolia puts out you guys put out a report, and it shows like how many customer service activities going on, what the category breakdown and all that kind of stuff. So you guys want to be transparent. Hingham wants to be transparent. There's plenty of information out there. How do we reach our customer? And I think the key is going to be social media. And I know for us, like jump through the hoop, like Chris is, let's make that list, let's put it out, and let's start to, like push that information out to the customer. So anyway, those are just my basic thoughts. I don't have a solution to all of this, but I think working together and kind of going outside the box is going to be get us moving in a good direction. So thank you. That's it.
John? Yeah, John.
Yeah.
Steve,
Thank you very much.
and so I just want to address one thing about that. We did put that out. And typically when we have a level 2 water main that's going to stay, we have signage that we actually put on the poles and everything. But we all felt it was more important to get this problem solution done before we put the signs up. So we caught as many people as we can with our notification system. And then people were calling me, well, this guy's one, this guy's one. And then we started getting emails from our little, we have a little email that we have people send to get people in trouble. I just want everyone to know that, we're gonna be pulling that off soon. But again, if we were gonna remain in level 2, we would actually post the signs and then put boards up. But I understand what you're saying. So the communication could be better, but it helped us a lot. Because the minute we put it on, the very next one in the tank just stabilized to where we could use it for what we needed it for. So thank you. All right, thanks.
Hi, I'm John Scuderi, I'm Health Representative on the Citizens Advisory Board. I guess first of all, water is one of our most precious resources, and many of us just take it for granted. You turn the water on, it comes out. Flush it, it goes out. And when people's water quality is affected, that's when we really get concerned. You can't walk with it, you can't drink it, you can't cook with it, not bathe it. It's just so important to our everyday way of life. So I think we all recognize that, we know that, and that's why we're all here. And we just have to make sure that we preserve that. The aspect of the event, I think there are multiple aspects that need to be considered. It appears to be that it was just all on Veolia to some extent, Weir River, and eventually to the other communities. And something like this, and I've been involved in similar situations where there's multiple aspects where you need to have an initial response and understand, okay, what's going on? We still don't know what's going on. So there's a response aspect that has to have certain groups of people responsible for that. The communication aspect, similar to what we've been talking about, good part of this afternoon. And I'm just kind of surprised that that communication plan wasn't fully in place prior to this event. And I know and I'm sure it's part of the contract, and it just has to be constantly updated. And I know people change, people go, and things evolve. But that's an important aspect of what the operator is responsible to maintain. Looking at the investigation of the response, there may be some remediation that has to take place. So there has to be a different group of people that have to deal with that. And then a follow-up phase of what has to happen beyond that. And so it just seems like we're all trying to react to this all at once, rather than designating, developing responsibilities for certain aspects to address each phase of the event. So it's something to keep in mind that, I think we need to work better at and be able to develop a plan so that whatever it is, and maybe discarded water, maybe a major water main break, it could be a major fire, it could be whatever else. There has to be a better communication and response plan that we all need to be part of, and there has to be direct communication amongst all of us. There's, I guess, the idea of the flowing hydrants when the event first happened. My recollection is they were opening the hydrants full blast. And I recall you mentioning, John, that there is a protocol to do that. And I don't believe that's the protocol. No, so, well, the hell,
No, I mean, that's going to impact the problem more, right?
exactly. That's what we saw.
We were out there, we trying to do like a 5 to 10 gallon per minute flow, to move the sediment out, but not disturb the system further.
No, I agree with that, but it's, the initial response was the hydrants were open and they were just blasting out. So,
Ron saying that, what he saw.
That's what I saw.
Yeah.
That's-
Was
I
that,
saw the
can I just ask where that was?
and
Can I ask where it was?
That's what he saw. We
Okay,
saw.
we'll look into that.
No,
Well,
I'm
we
just
got-
wondering where it was, because there were some that needed to be moved.
8th Street.
Okay.
And the fire chief saw some, so I don't know, we don't.
Well, and again, that's part of our investigation, right? Like I said, there are things we don't know that we're discovering and looking into.
And quite frankly, where I live, I get discolored water quite frequently for some reason. We got it over the past few months when the flushing program was going on, but, I know that was just part of that process. And during that process, you do tend to open the hydrants more so.
Sure, yeah, an actual flushing program,
Yeah.
a little bit different than what we were.
And I guess that's the other thing, we just finished the flushing program, to still have this much of discoloration was still surprising.
That's why we started revamping the flushing program, after this spring flood.
Yeah, yeah.
Because we had the same concerns you're having, and why is it not be as effective as we wanted to be? So that's something we're all working on together.
Okay, those.
That's why I think that unidirectional flushing is real, I mean, that's what that's for. That's to really make the flushing effective,
Sure,
as
sure.
effective as possible.
Sure. The other aspect is relative to water quality. I don't recall this being discussed, is the chlorine residuals throughout the distribution system. I know you check it at the plant, but where's it checked throughout the distribution system and how frequently is that done, or has it been done over the past?
On that map, you can see all the sample sites.
Yeah, I can answer that. So we test, during the summer months, 5 times per month. And during the winter months, 4 times per month, the entire system. So samples were taken on June 18th and June 19th. All which residuals were of acceptable levels. And then we took the next round of samples last Monday, again, all.
And where are these taken?
There is a map, Chris, I don't know if you have that to put up, that shows where all the
So
samples.
we have a DEP approved sampling plan.
Goes throughout the system,
Yeah,
though?
so it's representative of the whole system, correct?
Okay,
Yeah, it goes right up.
John, we can share that. with you.
yeah, this
It's not a problem.
The other thing I recall is that there were more than one break. I recall getting a dig safe for George's Island, that was a break on George's Island. There was another break in another part of Hull.
The Samoset break was after, there was one on Samoset, that was,
Yeah,
Tuesday. What's today? What is today? That was Monday.
Yeah.
Samoset break, we isolated that pretty quick. The George's Island break, we isolated right away, so the George's Island break actually helped us a little bit because, once we fixed once we shut down George's Island, DCR went in and fixed it on Saturday. We actually had them bleed water at George's Island for the rest of the weekend. They said they would do that for us to help get a nice little flow getting down to get the fresh water down. So they did help us with that, but that break did not affect anything. The gut did not have, the gut was actually one of the, it's the gut, right?
Yeah.
I hate you. I want to make sure you use the right terms. They were actually the best when it came to water quality. And one of the biggest reasons why is, one of our staff instantly went to the wastewater plant, cracked the hydrant there to try to mitigate the water from getting all the way down into the gut. But George's Island was running, but the George's Island break, we didn't send a notifier because it got shut down right away by TCR. So it didn't affect anything, but I understand what you're saying.
I do recall though, whenever we open up the hydrants at the far end of town, by the gut and Kempton area, that's when we get this colored water because it's drawing all the.
Pulling it all down,
drains,
pulling it all down.
Pulling everything all down. So I think we need to be aware of that.
George's Island is service, I think really hard because it's not our responsibility at all, but I understand what you're saying, so.
And I have heard, I thought even as far as Tuesday, that break's still enough and repaired. but-
No, it's repaired, everything's that,
Okay,
I was here for that.
okay.
There's the map behind you of the sampling locations, if that's at all helpful.
Okay. I'll look at that.
But just, so one of the questions we asked early on is exactly what you just asked, in terms of where, how frequently and where would it sample?
Right.
So that is something that this board absolutely followed up on, and I appreciate it.
Excellent, okay.
And that's regulated by Mass DEP,
Yeah.
where we sample from. We meet all the requirements.
And I think just to clear up some, I guess, confusion or maybe, I don't know, consent, but we keep talking about sediment. There may be some natural sediments within the water distribution system, but There really is a mineral buildup within the wall, the interior of the pipes itself. It's called tuberculation. It's when the water comes at a higher pressure and a higher flow, that tuberculation breaks off. That's built up a mineral deposit, iron and manganese, and that's what creates the sediment in the pipe. So that's the more typical approach.
Yeah, and then in all candor, we tried to keep it high level, but, we can certainly dig into the real science.
No, I understand, but people may think, well, why is the sediment in the water pipe? Okay, it's not always that way,
And the way it reacts during an event like this, depending on what type of mean it reacts differently as well. Cast iron, ductile iron,
Yeah.
those all react differently.
And John, as far as Georgetown, I think we are probably referring to people talking about, they couldn't drink the water for a couple of days because we had to wait for a coliform sample to come back. So once they made the repair, we allowed them to turn it on and use it for flushing.
Sure.
But they made sure people weren't consuming it until we got the result back yesterday.
Okay,
So
okay.
I think that's probably what people were talking about.
Okay, and I think the other key aspect is the investment in our infrastructure. That just can't go understated here. We all have old systems, Hingham, Hall, fortunately, Cohasset. We need to maintain it, upgrade it. There are technologies around today that can help us do that faster and less expensive than the old ways, just taking and replacing. So I think we keep those in mind and we have big investment in the treatment plant already. How many years old is that? That has to be constantly upgraded and maintained as well. So I'm going through that in our own, the whole sewer system. So I recognize what the need is. And it's going to take that long-term investment. It's not just a one-time shot that's effective. And the other aspect, and I guess Russ, this is more to you, it pertains to everybody, just to better understand was there an asset management plan developed as part of the capital improvement plan? So we understand what the most critical assets are within the system and the priority.
Yeah, so it is prioritized on what we're gonna replace first, and I know exactly what before, the number one thing on that plan was the Strawberry Hill tank.
Right.
Number two was getting Turkey Hill tank rehabilitated, and number three was a booster station. So those three are actively being done, but we are skipping through and, as mains need to be replaced, like we're talking about Sam and a few other things. So, yes, there was an asset management plan put in place into the master plan.
So with those my I guess comments, suggestions, I think this overall comprehensive plan is focusing on each aspect of an event like this, needs to be focused on,
And the master plan also deals with the treatment plan too, so we've already done a lot of work.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Chuck.
So Steve Girardi is on Zoom. He has a comment and question, and then Brian as well.
Yep. No, this is real quickly. I represent the North Cohasset residents, and I just had everybody go onto the Hall Emergency Management page, where I think Chief Russo definitely deserves a handshake, because he did a play-by-play, day-by-day, hour-by-hour communication posts on who to contact, and because I know the Cohasset Water Department was getting a lot of phone calls as well. So just wanted to say thank you to Chief Russo if he's in the audience enough. His play-by-play really helped on the Hall Emergency Management page. So if you're out there, thank you very much. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
So I'm glad to be, Brian McCarthy, I'm on the select board liaison to the committee. I'm glad I'm the last one to speak because I echo exactly what everybody said here today. Steve, you really did it. Chuck really did it. John did it. And the communication was the worst of all the problems that they had in Hull. Also, too, is my question is more, why is it so sporadic? So, because I get friends all over town, and I'll use the Alphabet section as an example. So say some people on B Street were getting brown water, but some people on D Street were getting clear water. That's again, I'm not in the water business, what have you, but as the main goes down in Tasket Ave, doesn't the water all pop off into the streets equally?
Yeah, it highly has to do with the size of the main. So some of the alphabet streets only have a 2¼ inch water main on them. Some of the alphabet streets have a 4-inch water main, some have a 6. So the smaller mains may be affected more because they're smaller pipe right now, the diameter and the flow. So, and when you have an event like this where the velocity may go up or the flow will go up, those smaller pipes are gonna have a hard time handling it. They're gonna strip off some of the, like Johnson tuberculation. So some of those streets will have a lot more. We are looking at, we've been looking at those for a year, how we can maybe loop them put better flushing mechanisms at the end of them, because a lot of them don't have fire hydrants, they have blow-offs, which have been under salt water. Once we go to press that blow-off, next thing you know, that thing breaks on us and we're in a lot of trouble. So there is a very methodical way we're going through the blow-offs right now. We've been doing it for a year. We've actually been replacing some. So we are working on that. It's one of those things that it's not part of the master plan, part of the operational plan. So as we have funds and stuff to do, we're doing it. Whether we turn it into a capital improvement, I don't know yet, but that's something we are definitely looking at, and we are working on it. It's slow, but we are.
Right, because that was one of the main questions that we had, why in one section of town where it was brown, why it was clear. So it's the size of the pipe.
It's usually the size, the makeup of the pipe, like AC pipe is gonna get brown dirty faster. It's just, that's the way it is with the pipe, composite out of the pipe. So we try to keep people off of our AC pipe. Like if we want to fill the back to trucks for John, we keep them off our pipe. We put them on our ductile iron pipe or some of our good cast iron pipe to fill up the truck. On those hydrants, we keep them off those areas. So it depends on maybe the material, the size of the pipe, age of the pipe, it's all different.
So I'm glad I came today, because you talk about education and educating people. I got a great education here today myself.
The
So,
good thing about education is again, Veolia is very good about education, and if you were on the notification system, we had actually put out a bunch of stuff last year on water conservation, how do you do this, how do you do that, so we do put it on our webpage, so just, we understand the social media part, so I'm not a Facebook person, I became one over the weekend for some reason, thanks to Chief Russo, but again, it definitely is something that we work on, we post all the time on education, and we will continue to do so.
great.
But
And one more an example that, when you talk about social media, a lot of elderly people are not on social media.
Correct.
So we have to worry about the most vulnerable, and possibly using the senior centers in Cohasset, in Hingham, in Hull, where they have newsletters with thousands of people's emails. Maybe we can tap into that as well. Because again, too, is when they were giving out water distribution, there was another issue because they didn't make deliveries on Sundays.
correct.
So here we were 3-4 days into the pandemic of water, of brown water. And of course, a lot of people were looking for water, they were going to come to farms, and again, you couldn't find a gallon of water in town to save your life. So maybe moving forward, maybe there'd be more of a reserve, for a better word, bottled water or some kind of water for some kind of temporary relief. Because that was
hard because, bottled water has a shelf life. We don't want to buy it and throw it away.
Yeah.
But I can tell you right off the bat that the minute we decided to get bottled water, I spoke to both Chief Russo and Chief Murphy, and they did everything in their power to get water. And both of them, when they said they would deliver on Sundays, I'm like, what? But that's the world right now anyways. Nobody wants to work on Sundays. And even these emergencies, we couldn't get bottled water on Sundays. I know I can't get a tanker of water on a Sunday, so it's very hard with some of the, but again, I understand what you're saying. So we were hoping that we only had to get one tractor trailer full of water. So maybe next time you get a little more, but they did a great job with it, both fire departments and the EMS, the emergency management people did a fantastic job. I went down to 2 of the distributions and they kind of just threw me up because I was in the way. But that was really, like I said, they did a good job with it, but Sunday was just a very, very bad day to try to find water. So we understand what you're saying, but keeping bottled water storage is not a good thing because the little bit we had left over, we are just donating to like the elderly, the 2 rec centers, 2 rec in the Center for Living, you see Center for Living. So we donated those 2 great entities.
great. Thank you so much.
Chief Murphy.
Okay.
Just a, that actually, one thing that we did learn, and this wasn't just us individually, it was actually MEMA, so Mass Emergency Management Agency. The water that both Chief Russo was getting and that we got in Hingham was under a state contract that MEMA has with different vendors. One of them in particular that we, Poland Springs, another one that Hull used was WB Mason. And to sign up and to get on the state bid contract list for emergency management, they're required to do a certain amount of things. And unbeknownst to people at MEMA, none of the companies deliver over the weekend. And so they're actually looking into this as well. So hopefully that will improve the situation and we will be able to get some contractors out there that actually do that. But even the directors at MEMA weren't aware that, none of these companies on the state contract list were able to deliver on weekends. So at least we can get something going forward.
Thanks for the clarification.
Chris.
Yeah, just real quick, there's been a lot of talk about social media, and you know, I spend more time on social media than I'd like to. It is not the answer, and but it is an option and it is a platform. But I agree with the previous speaker that, you know, we do need community outreach, we do need interaction within the community, and we need to know which organizations are the most effective at helping us with that. So I look forward to working with everybody in this room who's looking for a solution to help us find it. So thank you.
So I do want to turn it over for public comment and questions. So if you've got a comment, raise your hand. I'll recognize you. Then please come up here to the lectern. Yes. Introduce yourself, name and address, please.
Sure, thanks. Jeff Lynch, 53 Walnut Drive. I didn't have a problem with the communication. I thought it worked well. It was maybe a little bit over the top, but in a situation like this, it worked well for me. I got the emails, I got the voicemails, as I said to Joe, and I've talked to a couple of the folks in the audience. The phone number comes through as spam. And the only reason why I even got the messages is because I have a recording system and I listen to them after. Go ahead.
Well, we've actually sent out notifications to people. That doesn't come from us, that comes from your carrier.
Yeah.
We can't control that. And we've asked people, especially if it is a cell phone, to add our customer service number, so it doesn't come
Yeah,
through.
this isn't a cell phone.
Yeah.
It's a landline.
Oh, yeah, so we can't control that.
Yeah.
We can't change it to say anything. That's the choice of the carrier. So that one can't be.
Well, it's not that many carriers, so maybe you guys are a big Fortune 500 company you can deal with. But, and I do agree with you, Chris, and others that said that, you know, social media is not the silver bullet. It's in addition to, right? There's got to be multiple. I think the signage on the sides of the street, you know, in an emergency situation, there's only so many main avenues that come into the town, but you know, we can always Kaizen, right? You can always improve. I wanted to go back to the timeline. And when I looked at, and thanks for the presentation, the attention here. When I look at this line chart, right?
Is that the tank
The
level
tank
chart?
level?
The tank level. This is your flow, right? I go back and you know, the heat wave started on Wednesday, right?
Chris, can you put that up? It's sort of.
But when you look at the flow, as you guys mentioned, the flow is happening between 2 and 6 o'clock in the morning. The heat wave hasn't started yet, right? And you made comments about sprinkler systems, right? Well, when I look at this line chart and I go back to Sunday the 16th, the tank level was at 65 feet. The tank level at 1 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday is 55 feet. It's 10 feet below. And so my question is, why over the course of the 16th, 17th, and 18th, before this event even happened, we're already starting out 10 feet below where it was 3 days before that. I'm looking at you, but I guess.
Yeah, I know.
So again, this goes to the flow. So you've got 65 feet in the tank. Keep my hands talking. You're 65 feet in the tank. It's a 70-foot tank. So now you've got to start backing stuff down because you can't overfill the tank,
Right.
Because you cause other problems.
Right.
So you starting to back down the flow. Demand stops hitting, and demand starts hitting again. So now you're bringing the flows back up, but you're bringing them up gradually,
Right.
because otherwise you're going to cause additional problems. So it's that balance act you're trying to keep, and then demand that just it suddenly hits and doesn't stop, or then it suddenly stops, and now you've got 3,000-4,000 gallons you're trying to back down slowly.
Right.
So you're not causing issues.
Yeah, and Darren, and I don't mind you talking with your hands.
Sorry, yeah.
Bad
Bad habit.
As long as you're not in close proximity.
Right. But, you know, when I looked at the beginning of Wednesday at 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, that's 5 feet below where it was at the start of the day or the prior 2 days. So I'm just, you said there's a lot of events. We started off this sort of cliff drop 10 feet below where we were 3 days earlier. If we had had that 10 feet, would it have made a difference? I don't know. You guys are the experts. But when you talk about it drop 17 feet, well, we would have had 10 of those 17 in our pocket to start off with.
Yeah, but it wasn't, it's not the water that was coming out of the tank that is the problem. The tank level is only there to indicate how much water usage was there.
Right.
We were never in jeopardy of not having enough water in the tank. That's not the point. The point is that how much water dropped. So it didn't matter whether the tank was full or at 50 feet. That's not the point. The point is how much dropped at once and caused that velocity. Do you understand the
Yeah,
difference?
I do.
So that is factual, what you're saying, but not an indicator of what the issue was here.
And I think
More attention to the bottom of the drop,
Yes.
how much lower it is than the prior days.
Yeah.
Right, well,
Than where it started.
right,
I
but
understand
if
what
I
you're
had started with 10 feet more, I would have been 10 feet higher.
And I
But
guess
it-
the
And I
way,
get the rate thing, and actually that's what Joe and the other guy was talking about, when you look at the chart, and it's hard to see it, but the rate of decrease is definitely faster
Yes.
on that day. I mean, that slope is definitely.
That's one thing I think everyone's kind of missed on this, and is the way our system runs, and these guys do a great job with it, is our plant is always running all the time. So the plant has to make adjustments on how much we need, how much we don't need, when we need it, how much we don't. At the same time, we're looking at our wells. If our wells start to drop, we get it back off so our wells don't go to a critical point.
Yeah,
Then we turn on another well. So everything's a perfect balancing program.
right.
And it's not like, there are systems out there in this world that you turn on the wells, you fill the tank to the top, everything shuts off, you drain it down 10 feet, it turns on, it goes back up. Our system does not operate that way. I think it's a very hard balancing program, and everybody, I'll give every credit to the plant operators in the system. They do a great job with it, because again, they're balancing between what people want, what we have in storage,
Right.
and then what we have in the groundwood. And we are working with one tank through this main system. The high system, which is South Hingham, has its own tank in Aqua Pond, but we are working with one tank, and we have to make sure that the fire flows stay there. And it's like I said, it's a balancing program. So if you start a day 10 feet low, we just can't turn it up to 5,000 gallons a minute and fill it back up. Because again, the disruption, yeah, you know what I mean? It's a whole lot of things.
Yeah.
So there's a maximum that we can push from the plant. And if we hit that maximum, that's when we start saying to people, okay, we need to back off a little bit so that we can keep up with fire demand. So exactly what it is. We don't have a system where it fills it, stops and empties it. It's a constant balancing program.
Right.
So that basically.
I got it.
Like I said, yeah,
Well, we started 10 feet.
I agree. I understand what you're saying.
All the other.
And probably because,
And
everybody was watering their grass. We couldn't make up that much water overnight. So now you have to balance that whole thing.
well, it was on the 16th, it was 65.
Yeah.
And then on the 17th, it was 60, then it was 60, then it was 55. So it had been going down
Look, I
over, right? And your point to the wells, I get that, but Massachusetts isn't in a drought, so I'm assuming our wells, right, where I just did the research before I came to this meeting, and I looked back over the last 11 months. Plymouth County hasn't been in any kind of a drought situation. In fact, I've hardly used my sprinkler system where I live because we've had so much rain. And so to an earlier question, guy saying, I think you brought it up. All these people are saying, we've got all this rain.
But
And I get your point about the rate of drop.
Yeah,
So what is the point of that rate of drop? And you talk about the water main break. Well, that happened on Thursday, you said.
Surface on Thursday.
It's serviced on Thursday.
Okay.
Nobody knows when it starts.
All right, because this is happening between 2 and 4 o'clock on Wednesday. So was the water main break, did it happen?
It could have happened. We don't know because it surfaced on Thursday. So we finally saw it on Thursday. So that's the other thing with water main breaks. You can have a water main leaking for 5 days before we see it come up. So that's why some of this stuff was on the technology wise, we're gonna be able to implement to help with that. It'll drop.
and if I could, I think that's why at the beginning of my presentation, I said, we are in the investigation phase. I am not here to say 100% definitive, we know X, Y, and Z. We know what we know, and we shared what we know, but the investigation is ongoing.
And we do have,
We're adapting. Okay,
and we do have withdrawal limits, so it's kind of a balancing program. It's like a balancing act that we have to stay.
We can only take.
Wait, I'm gonna do. I want to make sure we have a time for it, but it's a great question.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else here? And then I'm going to go to Zoom. Yes, please. Okay.
Keith German, 104 Kilby Street, customer. Having spent many years in the United States Navy Seabees, having done similar work to this in water, I think a lot of this is great information. I think you're losing the people with the feet, right? You want to say, stop using water, or you send out a blast that says, hey, we're in level 2 critical, but it means nothing, right? Tell the people how many gallons of water, somebody here right now, what that 4 feet was. How many gallons of water was that?
28,750 foot per gallon.
Right?
Gallons per feet, sorry.
Okay, so multiply that times the 4, right?
Yep.
Where we at? Like 120,000 gallons,
10,000.
right? People understand that. People know what a gallon of water is. When you're talking about 4 feet, 17 feet, great stuff. It's in the chart. Tell them what they're using. I think the chairman said, people will rally around that. Hey, there's an emergency. We lost 100,000 gallons of our water because this is our water now, right? We own it. We're stakeholders. Let us know what that means. I think it's lost on the regular person. I get it. But the regular person doesn't get that. You say you've lost 100,000 gallons, they're gonna say, oh yeah, maybe hey, shut that hose off to the kid, right? They're gonna respond because it's ours now. This is a precious resource.
So I can give you an example. So when we talk about the amount that was lost from
2:30 a.m. to 7 a.m.
it was 500,000 gallons. That is a standard United States football field under 3 feet of water. Is that
People
helpful?
need to know that.
Yeah.
That should have went out.
That's a great point.
You need to know that I've lost.
Right.
That's my water. I'm paying for it. I own it. I voted for it. It's gone. 500,000 gallons?
Yeah.
Where is it?
Yeah.
I want to know. I'm going to shut everything off. We're not going outside today. We're not filling the pool for Mario. We're not doing these things. People are vested. I think you hit it on the head, right? And the water, just to hit on that water distribution, that was great, but we didn't know about it. So for the first 3 days, we're buying water or not using water, and that needs to happen better. Maybe like you said, if we're making water at the plant, why don't we invest if we're doing capital investments? In the Navy, we had things called water bowls. I don't know what you call them, like tankers with the spigots, trailer.
Yeah.
You set that up, buffaloes, right? Why don't I invest in a few of those and throw them out at a central location? You picked the high school, I imagine, because nobody was in session. What if we were in session? We're going to a different location, right? Bad idea. Same location all the time. I know where to get water. Even if I don't have Facebook, I'm gonna do a drive-by. The water distribution is here, right? Is the tank there? Great, I need 3 gallons. All right, same place, but another investment too. Invest in those things that you need to fill the water up at the plant. Set those things in Hingham, Hall, and Cohasset, be done, put your sign up. What if I work the night shift? I couldn't get to the 8 o'clock, or I can go get my water, put somebody out there, I spigot it, let me get the water, right? It's my water. Just an easy fix, something that we did around the globe, okay, so it works, try it. Just let's go.
We're looking at Mario.
He's third,
Like, Russ, go get the tank, yeah?
Yeah, so we're going to take some calls on Zoom.
Sorry, I wasn't ready.
1 second, we are going to go to Zoom. One of our commissioners, Liz Klein, does have to leave for a prior engagement, but we are going to continue. Liz, thank you.
Thank you.
And we will
Thank you all
begin-
for being here.
This will be on our agenda for the select board when we have our meeting on the 2nd of July. Thank you. She leaves.
Sorry, we'll get back in, we'll get someone to do. So who do we have? Bill?
You have Stephanie Grace from the chair, not Commission on Disabilities.
Stephanie Gertz, you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Identify yourself.
Great,
Name and
thank
address.
you. So I don't want to belabor communications, but just for the heck of it, I'm going to say communications again. But specifically for my population that I'm representing, the folks with disabilities, they need extra outreach, quite frankly, when things like this happens, and it's under sort of a utility framework. We need to make sure that folks know. A member of the Commission on Disabilities saw the discussion on Facebook and said, wait a minute, this is going to be a problem for folks who can't get to Hingham High School to pick up water. So members of the Commission on Disability, I can't take credit myself, members of the commission on their own contacted the town and said, how do we work this out? And as many of you know, the Commission on Disabilities mailbox, our email was given out to many folks across town as we were the folks to contact. We're happy to help, but it shouldn't be done in such a disjointed manner. For something like this, we, in a non-emergency situation, need to develop a list, communications, figure out who this population is and who needs to be notified. At that time, when something like this happens, if you want the Commission on Disabilities to do it, we need to be notified so that we can work on this. It was members of the commission, I'm so incredibly proud of and humbled to be a part of this commission because they stepped forward on their own. They did deliveries, they did outreach, they saw the problem, and they found the solution. Lots of people complain. What I'd like to do is more proactively find solutions and figure out how we're not in such a scramble situation next time. Thank you.
Thank you. Rick Smith, if you could begin with your name and address, please.
Hi, I don't know if you can hear me. My name is Rick Smith. I live at 5 Lewis Street in Hull. And my situation, I've listened to all this. Mr. Tierney knows of my address because we've had ongoing issues. And that's the basis of what this is about for me. We've been getting brown water, not from Juneteenth, but well before that, actually for several years. And the fact is, we thought that Weir Water might be going in the right direction because you talked about this event, you talked about flushing. Well, I know that they flushed last fall, and I know that they flushed in the spring. And I said to my wife, I said, well, maybe they're it's going on the right path. But for us, this has been going on. I've lived there for 10 years. And since shortly before Aquarian turned this over, we have brown water on an ongoing basis. We wake up on any given morning and it's like living in fear. We're seniors. The question is, will it be brown or are we going to have clear water? From a common sense standpoint, I don't get a lot of this. Over time, we were on Samoset and Lewis. This was before Weir. Aquarian said, we figured it out. It's a valve. They described it as a valve that allows the water to flow in one direction and not backflow. And they said, we're going to replace it. They did. They said, you're not going to have any problem with water after that. We still have trouble with water. Before Juneteenth, Weir came in and replaced a pipe from the street into my house. Not Juneteenth, but before then, because for the last couple of months, we've had ongoing situations. I'm not the only one. I certainly believe that Juneteenth was an event for many, but not for myself and not for quite a few other people, certainly in the Hull area. You mentioned Facebook. We actually get most of our information quicker from Facebook than anywhere else. because somebody will post something and say, hey, does anyone have any brown water? I'm over on C Street and I've got brown water, and then people will chime in. And so we're picking up on it well before you folks even tell us what's going on. There was something on Facebook before Juneteenth. A woman had a photograph and she says, I have a filtration system. And here's what a filter looks like. It's stark white. And here's the one that I just replaced, and it was black. She said, the problem is that the filter is supposed to last 6 months and this is after 2 months. This is before Juneteenth. So I don't understand how everybody is putting Juneteenth as the focus point here. From a whole perspective, we're not in season. We're just getting into season. We know about July 4th. We know about Labor Day weekends, and we guard against it. Hull is a community that is 10,000 people before the season begins and balloons to 27,000. We haven't even seen that yet, and we have these problems. Somebody asked about Strawberry Hill, and I'm certainly concerned about that, and I have a question about it, which is, I know that it was taken apart some years ago. I don't even know when, and that it was obsolete. I get that. But what we've heard, and again, the only thing I've heard is from Facebook, is that it's been scoped out and you folks would like to do it, but there's no funding for it. Can anyone talk to that?
I absolutely can talk about that. So when we first took over the water system as a town, we did do a quick analysis of the town and came up with the tank right away, but then we went to a more depth master plan, and the tank was the #1 priority. Since I got here in 2020, it's been my #1 priority. But due to certain things like COVID and stuff and a few other things, we had to put it off a few years, but we 100% have the funding. We have approved it in town meeting. We will be proceeding with the tank. We are actively looking for also some kinds of grants to curb the cost of the tank, but the tank money was approved and we are moving forward the design as I speak. That tank will be a big help to the town of Hull, but again, still the infrastructure is part of the main priority too. Some of the infrastructure needs to be fixed. In regards to your house, Rick, when we came down, I was told when I got down to your house that you've been having this problem for years, and I said to everybody, well, this is kind of unacceptable, and someone said to me, well, we just blew this hydrant off and then it's okay for a month. I go, but that's not a solution. So that's why we replaced your pipe. We should look at your pipe, your own pipe, but again, we can talk about that afterwards. The other thing we noticed, there is a dead end around the corner from your house, and our goal is to address that in the month of July or August at the most. But we are gonna look at that. But I do understand your concern, but it is the smaller infrastructure, the infrastructure, which is some stuff that we are working on. But putting the tank in Hull is gonna help tremendously with pressure and flow and all kinds of things. I don't wanna get details of it in this meeting, but we can talk about that. But it's gonna really help us, and we'll be able to flush out Hull even more and harder than we are now. So that is part of our goal.
Okay, and I don't know if you can still hear me, but to that point.
Yeah.
As a senior, and my wife just had a couple of surgeries, so I'm very sensitive to what's going on at my place. And so we're at a point that we said we can't even inhabit our house. So I started calling everybody and anybody. And I mean Elizabeth Warren and Stephen Lynch and right on down the line. And I heard from a few people. Now, I had an interesting conversation yesterday with a gentleman named Seamus, who is from Stephen Lynch's office, and I explained everything. And his comment to me was, because, and I think you just said that, Mr. Tierney, that you don't have the full funding of this tank. And his comment was,
we are going to look for grants to, we have the full amount, we're gonna get the full amount, we're gonna borrow it. But we want to also still continue to look at grants so we can reduce the cost we have to borrow, which is a benefit to everybody. So we are looking at it.
Okay, so his comment was, why didn't anybody reach out to us? I'm sorry, I missed that.
No, go ahead. Seamus did call me yesterday. I do owe him a phone call back, but I want to talk to Michelle first before I call him.
Okay, and so, I mean, to my point, after I described this to him, and he didn't know about some of it, actually called me back a second time, and his comment was, why didn't anybody call? This is an emergency, and this is what Mr. Lynch is there for, is to get emergency funds so that we have a tank sooner rather than wait a couple of years. You know, Hull is an aging town. There's more seniors coming on board, and those are in the statistics. The fact is, 10 years ago when I came into town, there was 2,000 students. Now there's less than 800. And the fact is that we're getting a whole bunch of empty nesters in there, a whole bunch of seniors, and this is becoming a chaos and a catastrophe. I'm not going to belabor the point. It's an ongoing situation for me, but I know that there's a whole bunch of others, and I'm hoping that people are not looking at June 19th or Juneteenth and saying that was the event, because there's others affected that have nothing to do with that day. Thank you for your time.
That's understood. Yeah, it's understood. It's that event. This event is not what's causing us to build a tank and do those things. Those are all in our plans. So. But let's meet next week on your service, Rick, okay?
Yep.
Yeah. Thank you.
Holly Rowe.
Holly Rowe?
Whoops. Yes, can
You're
you,
on.
can you hear
Yes.
me? Hi, everyone. Thank you. My name is Polly Rowe. I'm at 9 Rockview Road in Hull. First of all, thank you to everybody for making this public meeting and presentation and available on Zoom. From my end of it, sometimes it was a little hard to hear some of the presenters, so I didn't always catch everything clearly, but tried to read it in the transcript. I had 2 questions / comments. I wanted to say, you know, I have repeatedly in the emails from Veolia and in the talk, everyone keeps referring to discolored water. I think a lot of us Hull residents would call it pure sludge that looked worse than coffee. So there's a huge difference between the nice sounding term of discolored water and the intensity of what we call sludge. But you probably already know that. I have to say, as somebody who is on Facebook, but quite leery of it, to please be very, how do you say, I want a word of caution about Facebook and how we use it. Anybody who knows me, and even people who don't know me, say, well, I see all your posts. I'm interested only in sharing pertinent information that for us as, you know, in the town. And I don't, as a rule, engage. And what my typical comment everywhere, and especially during this water crisis, has been, go to, like, and follow Town of Hull emergency Facebook page, #1. #2, the Town of Hull, where our town manager, Jennifer Constable, puts out the official updates on things. So I think, I know I'm not the only citizen that tries to direct people to those sites. Town officials have tried to do that. But social media in and of itself is not a solve-all, because there's more misinformation, there's more, he said this, she said this, where do I go? So it's taken a lot of work by our town officials as well as those of us citizens to try to get people to say, go to these 1 or 2 sites. In other words, limited resources and get the flow of traffic to go there. My concern has already, one of my 2 concerns has already been, I think, pretty well addressed. I was going to say that knowing that at least as far back as 2018, when I believe Aquarian Water was still in charge of the system, We had the problems with not only discolored water, I think I was in a Patriot Ledger article showing my lovely glass of brown water from my kitchen sink, but also the problems with the Strawberry Hill tank. So it sounds like, from what I'm hearing, our wonderful water superintendent Russell Tierney say that Hingham Town Meeting has approved the funding for the Strawberry Hill tank, and you're just working on getting the grant. So I don't know if there's an anticipated time frame that you see that happening. If there is, please share that with us and here in Hull at tonight's meeting. The other thing that bothers me tremendously, and it bothers a lot of people in Hull, you know, you talked about extreme heat is nothing new. Extreme demands are nothing new. The 13-foot drop at night may not be anything new. We have a tremendous amount of increased, how do you say, housing developments in Hingham as well as Hull. And it's very disconcerting that as we continually grow the demand on our utilities, that we see the changes coming from the system, so that as we get more people increasing the demand, we can do everything possible, how should we say, to prevent this from becoming a quote unquote routine crisis. Is Veolia, is everybody doing, like, factoring in all the increased demand that keeps growing in both communities into the equation? Thank you.
Actually, to answer your question, the answer is yes, Polly. Every time there's a development put in front of us, we review it heavily. We have denied a few at this point, to the point where we're looking for other sources to be able to build those projects. But that is something that we're actively doing all the time. Absolutely actively doing.
Thank you, Polly.
All right.
Lauren Byrne.
Lauren Byrne.
Hey everyone, Lauren Byrne, 5 Pine Grove Road. I fortunately was not affected by the brown or dirty water, but certainly feel awful for those that were, especially that gentleman that just spoke from Hull. That should certainly not be happening where we live. My concern is on the water testing. So I've been getting all of your emails since this incident happened. And there are two things. So one is, in one of Viola's initial emails, you talked about the water testing, but you did note that it wasn't safe to use for baby formula. So I'd like to know why you can't put it in baby formula, but I can use it to make juice for my kids. And secondly, you talk about and I apologize if I'm not pronouncing it right, but the manganese levels. And it says 2 of the 9 sites were indicative of light discoloration. Back to the woman that talked about, light discoloration versus brown water, like how light discolor was it? Was it, we don't know. So I think some of the words you guys are using are a little bit misleading. And so that was just really concerning to me. And also I believe the woman, I can't really see, but I think she's standing, mentioned that you guys test the water, but it's been like days. It's not something you're doing every day. And so if that's not true, I want to know why, in the midst of this water crisis where we're being told there's levels of magnesium, formula can't be made with the water, you're not testing the water every day.
Because we're following the instruction of Mass DEP, who regulates our water supply.
Because what? Sorry, couldn't hear you.
Say you are. We need to say who you are. Say who you are.
Oh, my name's Leanne Monahan, sorry. We were following instruction of Mass DEP. That's who gives us guidance and dictates our sampling.
Leanne, can you?
Right, but they dictate your sampling, but you could also, just as a corporation with a lot of money to go above and beyond in a community that's clearly in distress, you could choose to test the water every day to tell the residents it's safe to drink. You could do that.
Right, but discolored water is discolored water. Once it's running clear, we want to know what it is. I mean.
But I'm not talking about discolored water. I'm talking about the 2 of the 9 sites that had light discoloration, which is indicative of elevated magnesium levels. This was in your own email that you sent out to the community. And then in an email you sent out 2 days ago, you told people not to use it for formula. So my
So
kids
let-
went
let
to
me-
camp this morning. I was afraid to give them water in their water cups because why can they drink water, but babies can't? It's in your emails. I'm happy to tell
Right,
you
right.
what date, but you sent an email that said, do not put it in baby formula.
Okay,
So I don't know why
we're
you
gonna-
look so surprised.
Okay, so.
No, I'm not.
wait
I
one
was just
second.
listening to somebody.
Okay, so Lauren, can you hear? Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, so we're gonna break it down. The first was the baby formula. We have Susan Sarney, who is our health director here. And I'll give you a layman summary and she can correct me. The baby formula issue is, the concern was whether or not the magnesium affected.
Manganese.
I'm sorry, manganese, whether manganese affected the ability of children to absorb certain nutrients associated with the formula. It wasn't as if it was harmful to them. It affected the absorption rate of
That's
the nutrients. Is that,
That is,
Susan, did I get it right?
Yeah, I just want to add, the level of manganese is 0.05 milligrams per liter. And the town of Hingham put out, Michelle, help me out, was it a recommendation or out of the abundance of caution? Infants can't be given water that has manganese if it is at 0.3 milligrams per liter. And the test results, Russell, you know the test results, those came in much lower than that.
So it's 0.3 is the warning, 0.05 or after
Yep.
0.07.
For the standard, yep.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep.
So Lauren, it was never at that 0.3 milligrams per liter, and that's for infants for baby formula under 1 year old. The test results that we received Monday showed a slight elevated level, but it was only at 0.07, 0.06. It
Yep.
wasn't near the 0.3.
Right.
So the water, based on that reading on Monday, was safe to drink.
Oh, that's great. So I think back to the point earlier that the person made about, I think it was Keith, gallons versus liters versus feet. If you told me that on Monday, I wouldn't have just spent 2 hours listening to this meeting. If I had known the levels, I think it would be helpful if you were proactive in saying, this is the standard level and this is what it's at. If you get blood work nowadays, you can go on my chart and read it and it tells you, here's your cholesterol, here's where it should be, here's where yours is. I think if you guys did that, it would save yourselves a lot of extra aggravation from people. So that's great to hear. And when do you test the water again?
If you want to talk about the testing and why it doesn't make sense to test it every day or how frequently you should be testing.
Yeah, so it's tested Monday, so when does it get tested again?
Yeah, we are regulated by the Mass DEP for our sampling schedule. They tell us when we sample and we have an approved plan of where we sample frequency. So that's regulated by the government to us.
But the question is, would it be prudent to sample more frequently?
Well, what we do in our sampling is we look at what the parameters are and what we're discharging into the system on a daily basis, those indicators that Darren said. And then we look at what the results come back with against those parameters. And if the results that we generate in the system are compliant with all the other parameters we're discharging into, then we know as long as we discharge these parameters, we can be assured that we're going to have similar results. So that's really how. So the distribution samples are a confirmation of all the activity that's going on in producing the water is effective. So it's more of a confirmation, similar to the coliform. So we maintain a chlorine residual in the system. And then we test the coliform to confirm whether that residual is effective at removing the coliforms. And we have established over time that if you maintain this sort of residual in your system, you will be absent of coliforms. So the coliform testing, for instance, is a confirmation on what we're putting into the system in terms of disinfection.
And then just my other question just was, so you tested the water Monday, so then when will it get tested again?
When is the next round?
For coliform,
Well, just, yeah, for test.
Monday.
On the following Monday.
So a whole week. Okay.
Yeah, Monday, Tuesday.
And again, all of it, again, just to reiterate, that sampling schedule and plan is ready to us by next.
Right,
So if
but
you
I
have-
guess, and again, in this like crisis, I think it would make me feel much better if you guys said, you know what? We don't want to wait a whole week. Why don't we let people feel comfortable about the water and test it on our own to give that
We
comfort
can't-
level?
We can't do that without the approval.
Mass TP.
And so what we're hearing is Mass DEP has a schedule and they have to adhere to that schedule.
We're not allowed to deviate from it without, for lack of a better word, permission, authorization.
So DEP has been informed of this incident, and this is the schedule that they are mandating Veolia to follow. That's my understanding.
Correct.
Can I address Lauren's concerns about the communications? Because this is something that we run into often, and I'm going to sound like a broken record, but I will say I put my hand up before we were talking about Mass DEP, because that is the reason we had said we followed Mass DEP guidelines throughout this incident is because what we say is prescribed by them. And so when you're saying, well, why didn't you just tell me that before? I believe me, as someone who does communications for these instances, I feel what you're saying. It would be easier if we could word things in certain ways. However, we are required by Mass DEP to say what we say, how we say it. So if there is an elevated level of manganese, we have to put out the advisory about the baby formula. And yes, that is triggering. And once you know the rationale behind it, it's calming or less triggering. But again, we say what we say because that's what we're told to say. And I know that's not something you want to hear, but that's what we're obliged to follow. And I hope that makes sense to you.
Understood. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah, language is regulated as well as our operations.
Okay, Mark Duff, are you available? Please proceed, name and address.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, my name is Mark Duff. I live at 37 Bradley Park Drive. I had 45 years in the Hingham Fire Department, 10 as chief. I was the emergency management director for the town of Hingham for over 20 years. My great-grandfather installed most of this water system in the town of Hingham. His name was J.J. Moore. I'm not speaking for the fire chief and I'm not speaking for the Hingham Fire Department, but I would like to say some positive things before I say some negative things. First of all, the acquisition of the water company by the town is probably one of the best decisions we've ever made. There's been a huge amount of improvements being made that never happened with previous water companies. Water mains are being upgraded. Hydrants are being put in. The water mains that are being put in the ground are being installed correctly instead of just digging a hole and then backfilling all the crap back on top of it. They're laying a bed down, they're putting crushed stone down, they're putting sand down, then backfilling. Tremendous amount of improvements have been made. It's not going to happen overnight to get the system up and running. But having said that, I've been through what I would consider in my years as the emergency management director, many incidents where we've had water issues, but three come to mind. One was a 20-inch water main down by where our veterans agent lives on Kilby Street. This happened in maybe 2012, 2013, where the water level in the tank at Turkey Hill dropped 20 feet in a matter of about 45 minutes. That's an incident that I remember. Number two, it was not uncommon in some of our drought years to have the water level in the tank at Turkey Hill go to 5 feet. 5. That tank has a 70-foot height on top of a 180-foot hill which gives it, when the tank is full, it gives us 240 feet of head. It went to 5 feet. And I also remember an incident when I was acting chief back in the 1990s. It was, I think, the Saturday or Sunday after the 4th of July, when the water tank at Turkey Hill and the water tank at Strawberry Hill, when it was there, went to zero. And when I say zero, there was no water in the tanks. If you opened up a hydrant where I live in Bradley Park, if you opened up a hydrant at Strawberry Hill, Allen Hill, Crow Point, Otis Hill, you wouldn't have got a trickle out of the water, out of the hydrant. You would have got nothing. If you flushed a toilet, it didn't get refilled. That was a situation that took place for about 3 or 4 hours. I believe it was a Sunday afternoon. We had a fire that day over in the shipyard that also put in a pile of building debris that also stressed the system that day. The point that I want to make here is, in all 3 of those incidents, when it got to the point where the tank needed to be refilled and brought up quickly, we never had the issue that happened here the other day. Yes, there may have been dirty water in 1 or 2 streets, or maybe on the street where the event occurred, but we never had a widespread dirty water issue like happened this time. So somehow Aquarian, Mass American Water Works, the Hingham Water Company, when they owned it, and several others, because it's changed hands several times, they figured out a way to replenish that tank without creating the incident that happened the other day. But again, I want to reaffirm the fact that this was purchasing the water company was a very good move on behalf of the town. 2 quick questions. How low did the water in the Turkey Hill tank get?
How low did it get? Is that what
What
you're
was the
asking?
lowest point? How low did the water get in the tank? Did it go below 39?
39 feet.
Okay, so the tank was half full of water.
Yes.
Okay, number 1. Number 2, the replacement tank at Strawberry Hills, that can be 500,000 gallons or larger.
1 million gallons.
So that's double what was there.
Correct.
Okay, and number 3, I believe, and I could be wrong on this, but I believe when I was the fire chief, I can remember Aquarian Water coming into the central fire station and many other points within the town of Hingham. Every day, it's taking a water sample. Every day they did it. The DPU requirement is probably a minimum standard. That doesn't mean you can't take sampling more. And I would suggest, at least until this emergency is over, that sampling be taken on a daily basis. And until we figure out what's going on, it would, I think, solve a lot of people's anxieties with the system, with the situation right now. So I could sit here and talk a half an hour on this. I'm not going to, but good move on buying the water company, but we need to figure out how to fill that tank up without creating this issue, because other companies somehow or another had it figured out. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Beth Brokaw.
Beth. You hear us? Beth Brokaw? You will come back. Next. Oh, you there?
Can you hear me now? I keep getting an unmute sign and I've done it and it's,
We hear you.
oh, okay. Beth Rockoff, 36 Pleasant Street in Hingham. I appreciate the fact of all that you've done to give us all this information, but my main concern is health reasons. And I understand that you're testing the water, and I hear what Mark Duff is saying and hope that it could be done more often. But has anybody tested the water for lead or asbestos? I know outside my house, I have an asbestos pipe. And when you take a pressure change and you're putting all of the different particles out, it should be tested there, not just at the site of where the water is coming from.
So, anyone from Viola?
Well, we just finished a lead and copper study. It was done the first week of June, and there was no exceedance in lead or copper levels throughout the entire town. A sediment issue of iron and manganese is not related to lead and copper sampling. But lead and copper has been done and was done within the last week.
Is lead and copper, is that something that periodically tested according to DEP requirements? And
we do beyond, actually, at the direction of Mr. Tierney. We not only do the 30 samples that are required by DEP, we also test all the schools every year to ensure the safety of the water at the schools.
And how often?
Our sampling schedule right now is once per year, but we have no exceedances for lead or copper in the system.
And with respect to where we sample, those requirements that it can approve sampling site location by DEP, we can't deviate from that. And we're not allowed to sporadically pick where we want to pull samples from. And the reason that's established is because that has been determined to be the most representative of the entire system.
Yeah, most likely, the sample sites are the ones that are most likely to have a problem.
Is there any indication that this incident would lead to problems with lead?
pH and water quality parameters are more what causes lead, not.
Yeah, lead leaches into the system, particularly during corrosion, which is a lower pH value. And that's why we monitor pH consistently. And the fact that the results that have come back showing no elevated levels of lead and copper is an indication that the pH control, the corrosion control that's being deployed at the plant is working.
Well, I know some of the water that has been brown is water that would have been supplying the school, and it goes through a asbestos lined pipe, and it had all of the particles in it, which are probably from the old pipe. The particles are coming off of the pipes, which include lead. And so if we're not testing for lead at those sites, and we're only doing it once a year, I hope we're not poisoning our students and all of Hingham like Detroit did. And maybe if all these
source water being done, so that doesn't matter.
Excuse me?
Our source water did not change. Comparing it to Flint is not a fair comparison. That was because of a source water change. Our source water has remained the same, with the same stability, having to do with corrosion control. That is not the issue here. What is coming off the sediment that we are referring to is tuberculation that builds up on the outside, not deterioration of the inside of the main, which is where lead and copper would come from.
But you don't.
Events are not related.
Well, it doesn't make sense that if you can take all of the particles off of the pipes, that doesn't include some of what's in the pipes. And in a concrete pipe that's 70 years old, or a galvanized steel pipe that's 70 to 100 years old. I appreciate you got this water company that is in bad shape, like all of the infrastructures, and you're on a limited budget. But for the safety of individuals in the town, as the woman before said about the manganese and the child's formula, all of this water affects all of the citizens of the town. And the ones that are getting brown water, the worst in Hull, they obviously have more sediment. They have old pipes. And it just doesn't make sense to me that all of these things are not being tested. And then I know it's not in the wheelhouse of the health board because they're not supposed to be testing the water. They literally test our water at the beach and they keep track of the well waters. But maybe they could help in providing what the levels are that are supposed to be tested, that are supposed to be when it's tested versus what it is when all these occasions occur. So people can feel comfortable drinking their water. I know personally, and this isn't a personal thing, but we have a filtered system in our house and we've had to go and have the filters changed. And when we do, they're black. And it used to be once a year. Now it's twice a year. And now it's going to be 3 times a year because we're going to do it again in 2 weeks when we could get on the schedule. But I'm sure it will be black again. And all those particles and all of that material that's coming off of these old pipes could have a possibility of being a health issue. And I am one of the streets that gives water to the high school and all of the students there.
What I'm hearing is a request by residents to examine our testing protocols and the frequency and see if there's a way that it should be adjusted so that folks are feeling safer. And so we should have that discussion. So we will, yes, thank you. Who's next? Is there a Hennis or Hens?
Hi there.
Someone with eight.
Yes, it's Christine Hennessy. I live in Crow Point. I'm concerned about what happened, but I'm also concerned about water insecurities with all the development in the town. We have these new houses going up that they're putting 4 and 5 bathrooms in that I think seems to be a little bit of excess, that somebody would have 4 or 5 bathrooms in these new homes. Also, has the town or the water company thought about banning lawn watering for the summer? Do you foresee water interruptions? Is the water level, do we have enough water to get through the summer? I'm concerned about water insecurities, just as I said. Do they have a sustainability employee that works for the water department? How are we educating the people in the town on sustainability? This town, I've lived here since 1980, and homes are getting bigger. People are putting in big pools, hot tubs, watering systems for their lawns. It's a little out of control. We need water to drink, to wash our laundry, to take showers. I mean, these are nice little niceties, but at the end of the day, is there enough water in the system to support all these people in Hingham, Howe, Cohasset? That's my concern.
But I guess the question is, to what extent have we done an assessment about the town's ability to sustain water usage?
So our master plan did address sustainability for water. One of the things that we are combating every year is unaccounted for water, which has to do with aging infrastructure. Our unaccounted for water was at about 23% when we took over. It is now below 18%. So that's really helping with having enough water. I know you're saying about availability of water. The act of banning irrigation systems is something that we would bring up to the Board for Rules and Regulations. It's not something that we've thought of yet. We do monitor usage. That's why we went to water conservation, level 1, level 2 water bans, and we'll look at it. Everyone keeps saying that there was so much rain this year, how can we not have enough water? Well, it doesn't have anything to do with how much water we have. It's how fast we pull it out of the ground and put our stress on all of our wells. So we could have all the water in the world, but if our wells start to stress a little bit, we're going to take action necessary to make sure we have plenty of drinking water and, more importantly, fire protection. Because that is the main function of we are providing water, but we want to make sure there's fire protection in the system. We are looking at other sources. We are doing a study right now to look at other sources of water so that we can keep the water we have, keep it the best it is, and then also you can still develop, but where do you get the other water? And that's something we are looking at. We have been a year now. So We are continuing forward with things, but we do take a very hard stance on big developments and how we can support them or not support them. So that's basically what.
Okay, that's good to know. Thank you. I'm really concerned about enough water in the town, that we can sustain the town with enough water. I don't know if any of you have seen any of the documentaries on the Hoover Dam, how low the water has gotten to the Hoover Dam, and they're saying, the engineers, I have something to do with the Hoover Dam and the company that I work for. The engineers are saying they're never, ever, ever going to see the levels of water that they had 10 years ago. So how proactive are we really being when you're allowing people to build a house? I have 2 houses in my neighborhood that were built recently that have 4 and 5 bathrooms. Is that necessary? What happened to the days of having 2.5 bathrooms? I get that people like to have more stuff, but you know, we have to think about the future of every single person in this town and how in Cohasset about water consumption. I mean, nobody ever thought, but nobody ever thought the Hoover Dam would get to the point that it is now.
Agreed. So we base a lot of stuff on the number of bedrooms in a home. So no matter how many bathrooms you want to put in your house, if you only have 4 bedrooms, you're still, most houses that are put up now are going maybe from 3 to 4 bedrooms. So we do have a calculation, we do look at it. And we do have people that want to put in houses with more than 3 bedrooms, contribute to a fund that we use to look for other sources of water or how to, you know, make our system better. The biggest thing is, you know, the unaccountable water get under control. But again, I understand what you're saying, but you could have 14 bathrooms in your house. If you only have 4 bedrooms and 4 people, you're not gonna use any more water than I am. You just don't want to walk as far to use the bathroom. You know what I mean? That'd be my guess. But that's absolutely true. You know, you have a 4-bedroom house with 6 bathrooms. That's us the people. So we are definitely based on that and what the flows for Title V are. So a lot of our it's all based on Title V. So like I said, the number of bathrooms, I understand what you're saying, it's more looking at the bedrooms. So we are absolutely looking at those things as people are asking for permits.
Okay, thank you. Next,
Nancy.
we have Nancy. You can identify yourself, please, name and address.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm Nancy Cranker from 37 D Street in Hull. I know this is off everything else you guys have talked about, but I followed your instructions in the emails to flush my system. I had the discolored water up until Sunday afternoon. So it was several days. I flushed my system several times and it kept remaining, but I'm on a tight budget and water isn't cheap. The sewer bill isn't cheap. Are we going to get some sort of compensation for having to do this? I normally conserve water a lot, not only for conservation purposes, but for my own budget. So I'm just concerned about how this is all going to come through, because I'm sure it was gallons and gallons of water coming out of my hose.
So I would suggest, Nancy, that you send an email directly to Russ so that he has your name, address, and you can report your usage. And I think, Russ, you should be able to address that directly with her.
Yeah, Nancy, we can talk about that off the meeting, but I'll definitely send me an email and your information and we'll talk about it.
Okay. And my other question is, I mean, this happens not to this extent. I've never seen it go on. Usually 24 hours it's clear again, but I don't understand exactly how keeping the level higher is going to stop this from happening when, you know, all the influx of people come. Is this, you really believe that's going to make a difference? Or is this like I should have bottles of water stockpiled for emergency situations? Because it's difficult to go 4 days. I mean, not only for my drinking water, bathing, I didn't want to run my dishwasher. It's, you know, definitely no laundry. It's, I'm just concerned. I don't quite understand why this event was so profound when I'm sure you get low levels periodically.
I think what we heard is that there was a confluence of events that really led to this precipitous decline and that really led to the increase in sediment in the water system. And I think that Veolia has addressed to the best of their ability, has addressed how to handle this. And they have basically increased the alarms so that if there is a drop, they'll get a notice sooner, because I think the level of the drop now that will trigger the bell will be less of a drop, so that in fact, we don't have to wait so long before we get the alarm. Is that fair?
Yeah.
I guess, I mean, I've been here for the whole meeting, so I understand the drop created the problem from unexpected usage, but I don't understand why it lasted 4 days. I guess once, I assume the tank replenished well before 4 days. I mean, I heard you say 50 hours earlier. I just feel like maybe there's something else going on that isn't related to the tank.
Well, the tank was the indication of the demand. The impact is in the pipes in the ground. So that sediment isn't in the tank. It's in the system itself. We're hopeful that we will be better alarmed and able to respond quicker if we start to see a precipitous drop like as we saw on January 18th. But until and unless, both from an infrastructure perspective and a directional flushing system, improvements are made, the risk or the probability is still there. But again, this was an unprecedented event in our opinion, and certainly historically. So, we're looking into what the confluence of events were that were contributing, and we're not, that investigation is ongoing. But there was no, lack of a better way, silver bullet that we found to say this was exactly what the cause was. And it was a system well. It was in an area within the system. There were other parts of the system that didn't see any impact. But we know it was affected. It was the Turkey Hill service area really that was affected by this problem.
I mean, I understand what you're saying. I appreciate you guys trying to figure it out. I just am concerned. I mean, every summer we get these events, and this one was so long. I just am concerned. I don't want it to happen again to this extent, especially. So that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. No, and we share your concern, and there's a heightened awareness, I think, of Veolia's part to make sure that this does not recur. I have pressed John and others at Veolia. I want them to say it won't happen again. They can't give us the silver bullet. They can't give us the guarantee. But my understanding is they are working diligently to make sure that it doesn't.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Lisa French.
Lisa French.
Hi, I'm Lisa French, 47 Rockaway Avenue in Hull. Can you hear me?
We can, please continue.
I had tried to contact in several different ways the Citizens Advisory Board back in early May, after I looked at your April PFAS report. I have not heard anything back from any member of the CAB or anyone else about that. I'm looking right at the report right now. PFAS levels, there are several different kinds of substances that are in the category of PFAS. Two of them, PFOS and PFOA, have lower levels that are allowable for safety, that being 4 ng per liter, or I don't know if that's nanograms per liter. In the last 4 quarters before April, since June of last year, the levels for PFOA were above 4 each time. And this really concerned me. I mean, obviously we know PFAS, it can't be filtered out. There's no way to eliminate it from the body. It is in our water. It was in our water. I'm looking at the Weir River Water System report summary for PFAS for April. Now, what I wanted when I contacted the Citizen Advisory Board is I expected a response. I expected somebody to at least acknowledge that I was contacting them about that. And I wanted to know what Weir River Water and the private company Veolia and the water commissioners are going to do about this. 4 times in a row, 4 reported dates, 4 tests in a row were above 4. The one in October of 2023 was 4.38 for PFOA. And the safe, the maximum level is 4. I'd like to know that you folks are taking this serious.
I can ask Lisa Russell Tierney, Managing Director. First of all, I apologize. We've spoken a few times, and I wish you had just contacted me directly because the Citizen Advisory Board is there for advice in an advisory situation. But as it comes to these things, you should just contact the Weir River Water System directly. So please be assured that I'll answer your question. Currently, the Mass DEP and the EPA, actually Mass DEP is set a level to 20. The PFAS 6, so the 6 chemical compounds that make up PFAS 6, the limit is 20, which we are well below. The limits of 4 for those 2 individual components are not due to hit our quote unquote radar until 27. So in 2027, we have to meet the requirements of PFAS for those 2 chemicals at 4 parts per trillion. When we have a full brand new load of carbon in our system, in our filter plant, we actually put out a 0 PFAS across the board, including those 2 chemicals. In the past month, I've already taken steps to do a study to make sure that we can handle the 4. Right now, we don't have to handle the 4. We are monitoring it, but we have to meet certain requirements by 2027. And the water system is 100% looking at that with this study. And we are, going with all of our raw water has been tested. We know which wells are higher, which ones are lower, and we are looking at those individually and as a system as a whole. So by 2027, you can be rest assured that the system will address PFAS, those 2 chemicals that are 4 parts per trillion. Absolutely.
Anyone else?
I was trying to finish.
Okay.
What you're saying, thank you, but what you're saying about the combined levels of 20, that's not what I'm talking about, because specifically those 2 PFOS and PFOA, the maximum limit is 4 on those for safety,
No, it is not. Currently, it is not. That would take effect in 2027. All the water systems in the entire country have been given until 2027 to comply. We are taking steps.
I'm sorry, I know. I'm looking at EPA tests. I'm looking at an EPS report that says the other PFAS chemicals are set at 10, but those 2 are set at 4.
Again, those do not take effect until 2027. It does not take effect for 27. In 2025, we have to do sampling. 2026, we have to do additional sampling with some remediation. And in 2027, we are required to meet those standards. We are not required to meet those standards currently in 2024.
What are you, I understand, what are you, aside from testing, what are the plans to actually eliminate the PFAS from our water?
We are doing a study right now of our water treatment plant to find out what we have to add, what we have to change, so that we can meet those requirements by 2027.
Well, it can't be filtered out in a water plant. PFAS
it absolutely can through carbon. And there is another method also. So carbon will take the PFAS out. We had if you go back in that report, there is a quarter that we got a 0 PFAS leaving the plant. 0.
Carbon.
Yep.
Okay, I'll double check. Okay.
Yeah, and then feel free to call me. You have my email, so absolutely get in touch with me and we can go over it.
No, I don't want to, I don't feel that I should have to call someone on the phone to complain about this kind of issue. I wanted it in writing. If there is actually a citizens advisory board that is supposed to actually respond to citizens, then it should actually do that. Otherwise, it's just a phony, sort of thing. I mean, is there an advisory board or not?
I promise you that I will have a discussion with the advisory board to make sure we're getting the emails, because I can tell you that anything that's technical, they will not answer. They will pass it along to us and we will answer the technical email. So I will have a conversation with the chairman of that committee right now after we're done, and we'll make sure that whatever comes in, comes to us.
Well, I didn't ask a technical question and nobody responded, neither you or members of the Citizens Advisory Board.
Lisa, I just said this is the first I'm hearing of your request, and it is technical because removal of PFAS. I don't expect Steve to know how to remove PFAS from the water. He would ask me. So absolutely, we will talk about this. I have no problem with it. Send me an email and whatever you want to do, I'll make sure you have all the information you need.
You know, I think that
If I can continue, I think you're highlighting an issue that we've heard throughout this afternoon, which is communication. And we will make sure that communications from water users are answered and that we reach out as needed to make sure that you get the information that you need. Do we have anyone else? Mark, you've already spoken. Are you continuing to raise your hand with an additional issue?
Well, this is my second time up and I don't want to cheat anybody. So real quick, good idea at the next selectmen meeting, Joe. Just encourage everybody to have a case of water in their home. Put a date on the top of it. Should always have 24 bottles of water in your home. A water emergency can come up anytime. It doesn't have to be in the summer. It could be in the middle of the winter when it's really cold out and there's frequent water main breaks. Everyone should have a case of water in it. And I think it would be a good idea to put a plan together in the event that we do go into drought conditions. What happened when we had a water company that was profit-based, the more water they sold, the more money they made. We're not in that position anymore. So they put a water ban on, the water level would drop because the honest people would shut their sprinkler systems off and the dishonest people just kept on going. I can remember driving around town with a water ban on and it'd be raining out and sprinkler systems would be turned on. So 2 quick points. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anyone else in the room with questions?
Thank you. Just one other comment that I've heard, relative to, the woman Nancy brought up, relative to some type of rebate or abatement to the water bills, because it's a compounding effect between the water and the sewer bills. And so if you think about it though, and I know this was explained to me years ago because I've had to deal with discolored water, like you said, many times. In actuality, it's not that much water they end up using. Even if you think you're using a lot, I know I ran my outside water for 2 hours over the weekend, different times, thinking they were trying to get cleaned up. And that didn't help, but yeah, I think I'm trying to help, but it didn't. But stuff like that, if you look at it, you might only end up using 100 cubic foot, 1 unit of water overall. And so if you have that, whatever the rate is, I can't remember the water rate right now, but it's probably under $20. Yeah, something like that. So, but if there's any type of adjustment, I think that's what people might want to hear. That if there could be some abatement or adjustment, I don't know if there's anything like that within the overall rate structure of the contract, but it could be something that could be considered just to take some of the heavy pain out of this.
Thank you. Anyone else? Bill, do you have any final questions?
No additional questions. I appreciate everybody's participation, all the questions that were asked by all the residents. Appreciate all the people answering them too. So I'll make a motion to adjourn when you're ready, Joe.
Okay, so I'll first begin with the CAB. Are you prepared to adjourn your meeting? So we are. Someone should make a motion.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting. Second.
Second. I can do a roll call vote.
Brian?
Aye, McCarthy.
Richard? Yep. Aye. Yep.
I just did here.
Steve?
Yes, so you're in. Okay, you're in. Yes. Okay. I will just echo Bill's thanks for everyone, their participation, their patience, and their concern for the community.
We value that and we are similarly concerned. We will have ongoing meetings with Veolia. In addition to today's meeting, I've had repeated meetings by phone, by Zoom, and we will continue that. And we look forward to working together to make sure that this does not recur. And with that, Bill, I will take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second it, and we'll do a roll call vote. Bill?
Aye.
I'm an aye. We are adjourned. Thank you all.